20th, Jocks 94.5, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Got some college basketball to get to today. Dave Pash was on the call for the Auburn game last night. He'll be with us at 8 a.m. Wimp Sanderson, the coach, as always on Thursdays, be with us at 9 a.m. And it was a little bit of a weird night in college hoops last night in general, but also for Auburn and Alabama. We talked about these games, these trips that were going to be made after everything that Auburn, Alabama was a little less than a week ago. And that's a tough road trip to Missouri that Alabama just made. And a game that, from a scoring perspective, Greg, it's not like many that you're going to see. And Alabama unable to come out on top in that one last night. 110-98, Missouri gets the win. They get to 20 wins on the season. Some of the same issues, though, for Alabama. Some of the same headaches for this basketball team on the road last night.
Yeah. How you feel about the start? Pretty good?
Not ideal. Actually, I went back and looked kind of at the game cast. I didn't see the start last night. My wife and I went to a show with a couple friend of ours.
What'd you go to? The Six?
Jim Gaffigan.
What?
Live at the BJCC.
Wow. Is he pretty funny?
It's a great show. He was really good.
Stuff. I've seen like promotional stuff on Netflix of him forever. I've never actually watched one of them. He just has a very unique delivery, and so he put on a great show. I would say that. It was not something that we sought out. We were asked to go, and glad that we did because it was pretty funny. Got to see the second half live, and went back and looked at how the game started, and yeah, it sounded like it was not ideal as to how things got going early on. Not great. We were talking about it a little bit before the show. I know that it's easy to kind of fall victim to the 2-game losing streak, but I don't think there's very many teams that are going to win on the road at Missouri after playing number 1 Auburn. I think if you look at the teams that Auburn's played, those that have played them close, few have responded well the next time out. None have responded well the next time out on the road. So I'm not really that concerned about it, to be honest with you. I kind of liked the move of starting Philon. Thought that made some sense. Hated the start, and when you're down 20 with, in the first half, you not feeling real good. It's kind of crazy to think that they lost the game, and at one point were shooting better, considerably better than Missouri was, at least there early in the second half. So I think it's just kind of one of those games. You go as a top 4 team on the road, team has you circled, you're a little lethargic out of the gate, and you just can't quite close the margin when you're on the road. 14
turnovers for Alabama last night. Obviously, that's something that has been a little bit of an issue for this team for quite some time. Bama goes in, shoots 54%. And you say, okay, you can live with that. Missouri shot 60% from the floor. 13 of 31 from 3 for Alabama, 9 of 23 from 3 for Mizzou. Mizzou outscored Alabama in the paint. Fast break points were big for Missouri. That transition was something that helped. Alabama was in foul trouble there late in the first half, as you heard the broadcast team start to talk about how troublesome that could have been down the stretch and was going to be down the stretch. So it's some of those same issues that have keep coming up. Turnovers. The offensive rebounding wasn't a problem, which I feel like at times it has been. And then this is one I can't explain, are some of the misses on easy buckets in the paint. I don't, some of the layups and putbacks that it seems now for the last 2 games Alabama's had issues with. I don't, those are inexplicable. I mean, you could say they're just happenstance, or that's just kind of the way it goes, but it's not something that's been a problem for the entire year. But man, it's weird to see guys close to the basket just missing shots and then not going down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. The shooting, though, and really the offensive performance wasn't too disappointing. I mean, 15 turnovers, it's terrible. It's not the worst we've seen of the year. 21 against Ole Miss was the season high. They did have 17 turnovers when they beat Texas, and they scored 103 points that night. So they've overcome the turnovers. That hasn't been a problem. The short putbacks, I do agree, have been a little bit inconsistent for sure. But the problems in this game were the defensive. I mean, just the defensive effort. And I don't know if that's going to get fixed. That's been a problem now for a little while. And then again, I look at last year's run. The team had major holes defensively and still made it to the Final Four. But I think part of that, might have been going against some teams that maybe weren't super capable offensively in the tournament. And they played better on the defensive end in the tournament. The effort was better in the tournament. So maybe they're just kind of hitting that lull at the latter part of the season. And they need a jump start, though, when things get going. And it's hard to just flip the switch like that, man. I mean, it's the defensive effort that's frustrating at times for me.
Yeah, I'm sure most fans frustrated with that as well. What is your level of concern for Alabama basketball after the last two games? Is it really nothing? It's just kind of like what Greg said, where we are in the season, how the schedule fell. 800-239-9569. If you would like to get in, discuss that, you can text into the show 205-834-9450. You can also tweet into the show at Mac and Cube. We will discuss college hoops at 8 with Dave Pash, 9 with Wimp Sanderson. You can be a part of that conversation now if you want to get in on just Alabama basketball and where you think they are. So concerns moving forward. Where are you with that as far as how concerned you might be about this basketball team? Where are your thoughts on their ceiling now compared to a week ago?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little concerned. I'm not sure I really know what else to tell you. In the biggest game of the year, you can't shoot it. The concerns for me arose more from the performance at home on Saturday than it did in the performance against Missouri. The Missouri game was a byproduct of what happened on Saturday, I think. Little lethargic, not great defensively, hanging their heads a bit, shooting it really well and bouncing back offensively. Sears had a nice night offensively, shot it well. So all that's great. I don't expect to score 98 and lose in the NCAA tournament, or frankly in the SEC tournament very often. But unlikely that you're dropping the ball at triple digits. Not happening. What will happen, though, is if you can't shoot it against great defense and you can't manufacture offense against great defense, like they weren't able to do with great consistency against Auburn, and you have guys that panic, veterans, fourth-year and fifth-year players that panic when the defensive pressure is too high, that is concerning. So I'm far more concerned after the performance against Auburn than I am after the performance against Missouri. But at the same time, my level of concern is about the same as it's been all season long.
Yeah, because they seem to be some of the same issues when you go look at it. Mark Sears, 35 points last night. It was a solid performance, but just different things seem to be needed. 98 points in a regulation loss for Alabama is the most since the 1979 SEC tournament loss versus Kentucky, which was 101-100. Missouri, this is their third game in program history with 100 points against an AP top 5 team, and 110 points is the most against an AP top 5 opponent in program history. Also, most by any team in a home win against an AP top 5 team since February 9th, 1989, when, oddly enough, Oklahoma beat Missouri 112-105. 12-point margin of victory, third largest against an AP top 5 team in program history for Mizzou. And it's the first time with multiple wins against top 5 opponents at home in a single season in program history. So the Mizzou Tigers made some history last night. It was a bit of a weird one, but over in Auburn, it was also weird, and one that we kind of talked yesterday about some reasons this one could be complicated. Coming off that win against Alabama, Broome obviously aggravates the ankle a little bit. You're going to get some size with what Arkansas brings to the table. Coach Cal's coached against Coach Pearl, so there's some familiarity there. Well, Big Z wasn't much of an issue. He was 0 for 10 in the game, 0 for 9 from behind the three-point line. Arkansas, 3 of 19 from 3 last night, 7 of 14 from the free throw line. Now, you can give Auburn some credit from that three-point percentage. I don't know how much credit you can give them for hitting only half of your free throws, but a bad shooting night for Arkansas sort of eased the way for Auburn last night, Greg. Not saying that they didn't do anything to earn that win, but it was one that was maybe a little bit scarier than it should have been. And Arkansas didn't help that very much from their perspective.
Yeah, I thought everything at the beginning of the game was sloppy. And it's not that unusual. Talked about it already from an Alabama's team's perspective. If you have an emotional game, it's going to be a little tough to bounce back in a short period of time. You have 4 days. I mean, it's tough. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you're back. And you got a high-stakes game against a quality opponent that's already shown to be a bit of a giant killer this year. Now, I don't think Arkansas is as good as Missouri. I don't think Arkansas is a top 15 team in the league. They're probably, 15th or 16th, depending on how you look at it. I think, what are they in the standings right now? 15th? So they're not great, but they're still capable. And as a result, it was uncomfortable. Was pretty impressive, though, how Tahad Pettiford was able to kind of jumpstart them a little bit when they had that run to help get that lead at half. And then I feel like when you look at how things went defensively, I just wish more teams could kind of watch how Auburn pressures the ball and how little space is given up.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable. I mean, it's just like every basket is earned. There's very few easy access buckets. I mean, okay, you can launch one from the logo and make it. Sure, they won't defend out there, but they'll give you that shot. But my goodness, anything within the perimeter of the defense is like, I mean, it's just suffocating. And it's all it takes is effort. They do have a lot of length, so that helps a lot as well. But my goodness, man, they just defend so much. They frustrate so many teams. Arkansas played their tail off. They played hard, but it just wasn't enough.
Oh, and that leads to transition points, leads to breakaways. You saw Chaney Johnson with a dunk on a breakaway last night. Pettiford has had success with that multiple times this year, and that may be his role moving forward. It's kind of the spark plug for the team when things are a little bit sluggish.
Yeah.
2 games in a row that he's sort of filled that.
It's such a good role to have, too. Like, I remember, Mavericks back in 2011 when they went and won the championship. It was like the greatest basketball run I've ever experienced as a professional basketball fan. And they had a spark plug on that team named J.J. Barea. And he's not quite the same player as Pettiford. He probably played 17 minutes a game throughout their run. And, of course, in the NBA, it's 48 minutes. But, my goodness, those 17 minutes were just relentless aggression, speed, effort. It was amazing. I feel like Pettiford, when I watch Auburn, I get the same J.J. Barea vibes that I do from Pettiford. Like, it's pretty impressive to kind of watch and see how he can just take it to the next level with his energy level on the court.
Well, he's just got so much juice and is so explosive. When you look at just how he can create and do different things off the dribble, how he gets to the rack and hit a big 3 against Alabama. There's multiple ways that he can sort of be that guy and help you. It was another nice night for Janai Broome, though, 100% or not. Didn't hit a 3, but 16 points, 13 rebounds. Last night. He also had 3 assists and just continues to be sort of steady in what he does and how he does it. 16-13, it provided him with his 36 15.10 rebound game as an Auburn Tiger. That's the most by any SEC player in a season the last 20 seasons, in a career at one team. He passed Oscar Tshiebwe to give you an idea of double-doubles and what he's doing, because Tshiebwe felt like that was every night for a couple of years. His 8th straight game with 15 points. That's the longest streak of his career. 11th game this season, leading the team outright in points and rebounds. That's the most in the SEC, tied for most in all of Division I. So it was not a good shooting night for Arkansas. As you stated, Greg, you give Auburn some credit for that. But you knew that with them being on the bubble, maybe one of the last 4 teams in or one of the first 4 out, that Cal was going to be able to motivate them that way. Like, hey, you go get this game, especially if you get it here, you're in the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's going to be enough for us to get in. And catching Auburn, coming off the Auburn win, which was emotional and obviously taxing, Auburn survives. And that's kind of where we are right now in basketball season. That's the key. Survive in advance and just sort of figure it out game by game. And another nice game for Chaney Johnson as well. I don't know what the extended role potentially could be for him down the stretch, but 28 more minutes last night. 14 points. It was pretty solid for him as a good night of basketball in the SEC. UAB last night gets a win over Rice, 90-89. And speaking of double-doubles, Yoxel Lindenborg, again, 21 points, 14 rebounds, 8 of 8 from the free throw line. That makes him 14 of 14 from the free throw line in his last 2 games. He had 2 blocks, 2 assists, 2 steals. He's just unbelievable for Andy Kennedy's group. They shot 46%, 7 of 15 from 3, out-rebounded Rice 42-36, and they get to 17-9. Sanford goes down to Furman 80-72. South Alabama took out Arkansas State 60-56. Arkansas State last night, by the way, 6 of 31 from behind the three-point line. 31 threes in that game last night, and they go down to South Alabama. So we got a lot more college basketball to talk, a lot more to get to throughout the course of the show. We will switch gears to college football next. I want to ask Greg a question about SEC rosters as they stand today. Before we do that, Greg, tell our listeners about Bromberg's.
Well, Bromberg's has been a terrific partner for a very long time. Have great relationships. When you walk in the door, you already know what the people's names are. They know what your names are. They know what your kids' names are. They make it a very personal experience. I'm always very grateful to the time that I have when I walk in the store there, and I love what the things they sell represent. For instance, getting a natural diamond at Bromberg's, you go and get best possible value, a responsibly sourced diamond that supports communities all across the world. The amazing thing about diamonds is that the natural diamond actually begins its journey to you 3 billion years ago. It's amazing. It starts 100 miles deep within the earth. So to think that rock that you're putting on your loved one's hand, it's a pretty amazing story when you think about what it does, but really more so what it does to communities around the world. It supports millions of people, and it's also really, really valuable to the environments that those diamonds come from as well. So highly recommend going and checking out the wonderful people at Bromberg's in Mountain Brook Village and the Summit.
All right, when we come back, a question about college football rosters, specifically SEC rosters, next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, Thursday, February 20th, 7:20 a.m. right here on Jocks 94.5. We will switch gears from college basketball head back into college football for just a moment. Dave Pash will be with us at 8. He was on call for the Auburn game last night. We'll discuss a game in which the Tigers closed on a 10-2 run to finish that game. And were able to hold on to get that win. Auburn 15-0 against unranked teams this season. A question came to my mind yesterday, Greg, when we were talking about SEC teams and some of these depth charts, some of these teams, and we talked about the interior of the defensive lines and how they're just not what they once were. We said that actually going into last year. And it feels like this year maybe even a little more so of where we're just lacking those big-time players. And then I got to thinking about big-time players. And I was thinking about all-time players at individual positions. And I think if we were to have a practice of what schools, what teams in the Southeastern Conference potentially have or a couple all-time players at individual positions, not overall in school history. I don't think many teams have a top 5 player in school history right now, or what we think could turn into one. But I wanted to go through and just kind of look at who might have an all-timer at a certain position in the SEC. We can go team by team, or let's make it top 5 at an individual position. Because I think if we went a lot of schools in the SEC, one of those interior defensive linemen might be a top 5 player in school history. When you think about Alabama, you think about LSU, you think about Auburn, potentially Georgia, you could probably come up. Tennessee might be one of those teams. So we could have that practice with a couple different schools, but maybe let's just go by position right now.
Okay.
Any position on the team you think has a guy that could be a top 5 player all time in school history at that position? We'll start with Alabama.
Off the top of my head, no. Nobody that would be a top 5 at any position. Ryan Williams is the one that would come to mind, but it's still a little early at this point.
He would be the one that I would bring up. I mean, if you're talking about having an opportunity to be there, but I mean, you obviously have, let's just say, the Saban receivers.
I'm about to say, take a pick.
You just have to get through those initially.
Are you going Ryan Williams or Amari Cooper right now?
If you're talking about Alabama career, it's Amari Cooper.
Yeah, you going Ryan Williams or Jerry Jeudy?
Probably Jeudy right now.
It's close.
Yeah.
You going Ryan Williams or Devontae Smith?
Devontae Smith right now.
Is it close?
No.
Okay.
No.
You going Calvin Ridley or Ryan Williams?
Right now it's Ridley at Alabama.
All right. You going Julio?
I'm going Julio. You don't even have to say it.
All right. So I think that he's got a chance to maybe at some point get to the top 10. Top 5? Gosh, it's tough.
I think he's got a shot at the top 5.
Yeah.
Saying to go past Smith, I mean, we know receivers winning a Heisman is not normal. Smith. So that's going to be extremely difficult.
He's also got to catch a walk-off game winner in the Natty.
That's
so
also something that he's got in his resume. Let's go to Arkansas. When you look across the board at the Arkansas Razorbacks, do you think that there's when you think of all-time great positions for Arkansas, first off, you're definitely going to think running back. You could probably think some defensive linemen. Definitely, you had some really good quarterbacks. College quarterback. We're just on college quarterbacks. We don't care about the NFL in this practice,
right?
But I mean, safety, you've had some good ones, but top 5 all-time at individual positions. Do you see any on this roster?
I mean, tell me how many. Like, in all seriousness, tell me how many. Gosh, I mean, I don't even know about the transfer guys. I mean, Xavier Sori is pretty good. I don't know if I can.
Really good year last year, yeah.
I don't know if I can go top 5 linebackers in Arkansas history. I don't know. I wouldn't even be able to begin to list the top 5 linebackers of Arkansas football.
Would Taylon Green be a possibility?
I think Taylon Green's got crazy high ceiling. So yeah, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Who are the best quarterbacks in Arkansas history? Clint Sterner, the guy that could run, played for the Jags, whatever his name was.
Matt Jones.
Wilson. No, not
Tyler,
Wilson.
Tyler Wilson had a really good career there. Yes. Ryan Mallett is going to probably.
Mallett.
Tyler Wilson is second all time in school career passing yards.
Brandon Allen.
76. Brandon Allen's 4th all time. Sterner's 5th. KJ Jefferson's actually 1st. If you're talking about just production at the school, KJ's probably in that mix. But I think we know there have been some really good quarterbacks in Arkansas history, but I think Taylor Green's got a chance to get there.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a top 5 quarterback in school history, program
history.
Still got 2
years left, too.
Yeah, he has a real chance to do that because I think he quietly put up numbers that are a little bit better than a lot of people gave him credit for a season ago.
He delivered a top 5 win, which doesn't happen often for Arkansas.
3,154 passing yards, 15 touchdowns. Now the 9 interceptions you don't love, but he also added 602 yards on the ground with 8 touchdowns. You go to a game like the Auburn game, they don't win that game without his legs.
No.
So he did some big things and some big moments. So I would say, yeah, that would be the one for me that I would look at and say, okay, that could be a top 5 player at that position for them. All right, let's go to Auburn. When you look at this depth chart, are there players at individual positions that you think could be top 5 all time in school history at that position?
Cam Coleman?
Possibly.
I mean, I think in time.
I doubt he'll be there for 2 years, but you could maybe say that for Singleton.
Yeah, I mean, Singleton could be. Think about the receivers at Auburn and how underwhelming that group is. Like, seriously.
Has been.
No, I'm talking about over the course of time.
Correct.
I mean, the best player in my lifetime that played Auburn might be Williams.
In my lifetime, it's Duke Williams. If you're just talking about the most talented and the best at what he did, I would go Frank Sanders next. I would probably go Courtney Taylor after that. Devin Aromashodu had a good year.
Manu.
Seth Williams was a little bit injured and a little bit of a one-trick pony down the field, kind of like a Darvin Adams. There were guys who I think could have had better careers, like a Darius Slayton, but just weren't really given opportunities because of the offenses that they played in. But like I think a guy like, and you guys won't remember him, but I think a guy like Tyrone Goodson's vastly underrated. I think he is one of the better receivers in Auburn history. Toughness, physicality, could go catch the deep ball. He was undersized, but he made plays, man. Like he was really good. But you're right. That's a room that for a program that has a ton of tradition, a ton of history, and a ton of great players, number 1 overall draft picks, the receiver room has underwhelmed historically. It just has, which is why I think there might be a couple of guys that have a chance to crawl way up the ladder as far as where they would rank for fans all time in school history.
I just don't know the history of Auburn receivers that well, but all I know is that Duke Williams is probably the best one I've seen in my lifetime.
If you asked me, you told me I could have one for a game and he was going to keep it between the lines and be productive. I mean, Terry Beasley obviously has to come into this conversation at some point, but I mean, Duke Williams would be the guy that I think you'd have the hardest time stopping when he's on his game. Yeah. I'll say it that way.
So that's a fair assessment. So I can live with that. I don't have any problems with Duke Williams. I just don't think Duke Williams is like a complete game changer. Like he was at times.
I think he could have been, yeah, but I just think there was a lot going on there. By the way, Tyrone Goodson is second all time in career receiving yards in Auburn history with 2,283.
Given the success of Auburn's historical program, is it fair to say that receiver has been their least effective position?
Yes. That and center.
Crazy. Crazy. No, Reese Dismukes. Crazy.
No, Auburn's had good centers. I mean, but Shannon Robique was really good.
Okay, but
Ben Allen was a good player. I just wasn't one of them.
Gotcha. Wasn't thinking that way, but I was going to say, either way, I get the sense that Auburn's won a lot of games, had a lot of success. Their least impressive position historically is by far wide receiver.
There's no doubt.
It's just crazy.
Hell, they've had better tight ends and fullbacks than they have receivers probably.
Not even close.
I mean, it's not going to be D tackle. It's not going to be D end. It's not going to be linebacker. It's not going to be corner. It's definitely not going to be offensive tackle. Offensive guard, I think, has been really good over time. We know good and well running back doesn't need to even come into the discussion. You've had a number 1 overall pick at quarterback. You've had a couple other NFL quarterbacks with decent careers. So it's not going to happen.
So I think part of this conversation and part of this practice has to do with how good has the school traditionally been at that position.
That's why I think it's a fun conversation.
I think it's a great conversation, which is why I think there's a real conversation to be had for Eric Singleton. I mean, I know it's early. I know he's never played it down in an Auburn uniform, but he has that type of ability. He's that good. I think we could see the same for Cam Coleman. I mean, I think that those guys can definitely crack the top 5 if they reach their potential.
The other part about Singleton is Auburn hasn't had, I hate calling Eric Singleton a gadget guy because that makes you think that he's only good at, one thing when it goes one way. He's not that. He's just a great football player. But if you wanted to say utility receivers or flex receivers or hybrid receivers, whatever you wanted to use to describe it, I think Auburn's had fewer of that guy.
Yeah.
Because you think about a guy like an Anthony Schwartz, he had inconsistent hands. And yeah, when he got an end around, he was scary, but you weren't going to throw him a variety of screens and he was going to find ways to make them all go. Like it kind of had to be a smooth north-south transition for him to really hurt you. Like I think about when T-Rob played at Auburn, like he could do some of that stuff, but he was also playing defense. So he wasn't even really a full-time receiver. I think like you go back to Ontario McCaleb, who was more of a running back, but was used more on end arounds. Like those type players, sort of. Auburn has had probably fewer of those guys, even more so that could help Singleton. If you got 2 years out of him, I think it'd be a really good conversation. But I think it's more than feasible. Give you an idea. Keandre Lambert-Smith had 981 receiving yards last year. I told you earlier, Tyrone Goodson has 2,283. That's second all time. That's where that position has been historically.
Crazy.
So we'll knock one more out before we go to break as we kind of rolled through Auburn there. Next in line would be Florida.
Florida.
And there's one obvious position, but it is probably also one of the most difficult individual positions in this league to climb way up the charts on. And I think that would be quarterback. I think you look at it and say, is there a guy that has that possibility that down the road maybe could be one of those guys? You'd say, I think Lagway probably has the tools to be able to turn into that guy, but you're going to go past Spurrier and Werfel and Tebow and even start talking about like Rex Grossman.
I don't know about all that. Don't get me wrong. I love what Lagway is, dude. The way people remember him versus what he actually is, there's a big gap there.
But keep in mind, we're talking about possibility, not
I get it.
Will be.
I get it. I'm just saying he's not as good right now as people probably think he is. If you look at his numbers, you look at some of this other stuff, like I love the guy. I really do. I think he's phenomenal. I just don't think people view him as the second coming of Cam Newton, and he's not that right now.
Yeah, that's not the category I would confidently say not in that league.
Not yet. Maybe in time. Plus, Cam Newton's in the top 5 at quarterback at Florida too.
Is he?
Yeah, for sure. He's a Florida guy.
I didn't know he put up numbers there. You're talking spring top 5, spring game top 5s. Yes.
No, he put up numbers there.
Listen, Eugene Wilson's a good receiver, but Florida receivers that's a loaded position.
He ain't there.
I'm not going to
Florida every position over the course of time is just
I'm not
dumb.
touching the defensive line with the guys that they've had. Hell DB. We're not going there. So I think it would say, and even Jaden Baugh, who I love, let's think about some of the Florida backs we've seen over time. That's not going to be realistic to be able to get there. So it doesn't feel like Florida maybe has that guy. I would say Lagway would be sort of on the watch list of this practice if we had one.
Lagway better start ripping off some natties.
That's a part of it as far as what you've done. And so
you don't have Tyreek Sapp up there?
I'm not putting him next to some of the guys that I played against or that have played there since.
No,
not
can't do
not
it.
A real thing. No. The Georgia Bulldogs are going to be a tough one though. That will be one that is a little bit complicated. We will go to that team, talk about the Dogs on the other side. If you want to be a part of this practice, 800-239-9569. Still some cold weather hanging around. We had snow flurries out there this morning. Schedule your system checkup now from a Train Comfort Specialist. Train has been recognized 10 consecutive years as America's most trusted HVAC brand and our exclusive home comfort partners here at Jocks. Visit Train.com to find a comfort specialist near you. Back to rosters that may contain a top 5 player at a certain positions in the SEC. Georgia, Kentucky, LSU are next right here on Mac and Cube in the morning. 800-239-9569 if you would like to join the show on the Buyers Right hotline. You can also tweet in at Mac and Q, be a part of the show there. Listen online, jocksfm.com. App is in your app store, iPhone, Android. Download it for free. Listen there. Also, click YouTube. Watch the show live every morning via the Jocks app. We're talking SEC football rosters and who may contain an all-time great at any individual position. Georgia going to be a team that's tough when we get to that. When you talk about kind of who they've had over time, and then maybe even more so what they have right now. But when you go down that offense, you go down that defense, do you see a top 5 player at an individual position for this team?
No. I just look at Georgia too. The running back room that they've had forever has been ridiculous. I mean, Nate Frazier, I think, in time could be one of their best players, if not their best player. I don't think there's a chance he cracks the top 5. He might not
be top 20 running backs.
I mean, it's absurd. Receivers, there's no one that comes to mind there. Like, I'm cautiously optimistic that they've improved that core this year, but I don't know. I mean, TBD, no one on defense that I could think of. I don't know if you got someone on defense.
The only one that I would maybe consider, just because I've seen some flashes, and this would be a big stretch, would be Raylan Wilson. And then the individuals that he would have to move past would be beyond difficult, but I think he has the God-given ability to do it. Now, it's a lot more than that to be able to get to where some of the all-time greats were, and I wouldn't feel great about doing that. But he would be the only one, even from a skill set perspective, I think, on that side of the ball that I would bring up. All right, so let's move to Kentucky, a team that I do think in the last 3 to 5 years, if we had this practice before the season, we would point to a couple of different individuals and say, yeah, I think he probably could be one. I think he might be one. I don't know if I see it on this team as one of the top 5 players at an individual position, because you've had some really good defensive linemen, edge defenders recently. Off the ball linebacker has been good. I don't know if you have that guy right now. We know running back's been pretty good, and we both like Jamarian Wilcox, but top 5 in school history, I don't think that's a real thing. And then there's some turnover with offensive line and wide receiver, so I'm not going to necessarily put any of those above there. For me, it's a pretty easy no for Kentucky right now.
Yeah, right now it's just too much of an unknown. I mean, Zach Calzada is probably the best option.
It's not. I don't believe
why you don't like
there.
Why
not top 5 all time in school history? No, I'm not going to allow that.
Behind the hefty lefty,
he would definitely be behind there now, and will probably finish behind there.
Wow, yeah. Haters.
Yep.
All right.
So just
no
don't really see that. Another very difficult practice anytime when you're talking about all-time positions is going to be LSU.
Yeah, good luck.
Just getting in the conversation at a lot of different spots is going to be almost impossible.
I don't know, though. I got one spot.
Go for it.
Quarterback.
Top 5.
Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels. Keep going.
I'm going to give you Jamarcus Russell, and I don't care what he did in the NFL.
I agree. Good player. All right, so we got 3.
I
mean, Zach Mettenberger?
Probably not.
Okay. Jordan Jefferson. There you go.
No.
Come on.
Tommy Hodson's probably going to be ahead of him. If it wasn't for what Jamie Howard did in Jordan-Hare Stadium, he might be there. Is Danny Etling going to be ahead of him?
No.
Rohan Davey?
No.
Jarrett Lee? Not
No.
Max Johnson.
No. Matt Mock? Matt Mock was a good player.
Did some good things.
I don't know if
He actually didn't play a ton of football.
No, I think he only started like 1.5 years. But Matt Mock was a good player. I just don't know if he's going to be the guy. But I think Nussmeier could be that guy. I mean, he could go, and he's number 3 in the Heisman odds. I mean, I'm not saying he wins it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I've seen him won in some places. So.
No, as long as Arch Mannings's playing football, so you're behind him.
Garrett Nussmeier is already 9th all-time in passing yards in school history. So kind of gives you an idea where he is. He is also 6th all-time in passing touchdowns. I don't know if he's got a real shot at Burrow this year. Burrow has 76 in his LSU career. Nussmeier has 40. So that's going to be a bit of a stretch, but could get to 2nd with Tommy Hodson, 69, or Jaden Daniels, 57, could get to 3rd. So I think it's 5th is maybe possible out there. I don't think going past that is going to be real for him. That's just me. But that's a place.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, though. I'm just suggesting it's possible.
Yeah, no, I think it's feasible. There's no other positions though, right? I mean, it's like we love Whit Weeks, but I don't know if he's going to be a top 5 off the ball linebacker in LSU history.
Come on,
I don't know if Harold Perkins is going to be able to find the home defensively to do the things he would need to do to be considered one of the top 5 edge rushers in LSU history.
No.
Does he have the ability to be there?
No. Dude, we're talking about edge rushers. LSU edge rushers.
I get it.
Like, forget about it. Good luck. There's like, you could take 3 off the 2003 team that would be ahead of them.
It feels like a tough place to sort of break in.
Good luck. You better be all world.
And there are parts of him that you see that if it was all a good fit and it all worked out, maybe, he could kind of find his way into that. But you got to be on the field. And if he's going to put up those kind of numbers, he's going to have to be on the field a lot. And that's been the problem, is that he's not able to stay on the field and be that kind of a player. So we'll continue the practice on the other side. Plenty more SEC teams to get to. Ole Miss, Missouri, Mississippi State on deck as we continue discussing all-time players currently on SEC rosters. If you're looking for all-time health benefits, your CBD store wants to help you today. They have broad-spectrum mango CBG gummies that can help get your day started, can wake you up just a little bit. The Trim by Sunmed is on the shelves now for weight loss. If maybe the holidays weren't kind to the waistline and you drop a few pounds, your CBD store wants to help. Better night's sleep, helping with aches and pains, arthritis an issue, they have products that can help. Gut health, skin care, all can be relieved with products from your CBD store, the largest brick and mortar CBD retailer in the world. First company to have USDA certified organic oil supplements. They have the stamp seal on those products. Therefore, they meet and achieve a certain set of standards. 3 locations, Highway 280 by Bailey Brothers, 150 by the Cajun Cleaver, Trustful just off 459, your CBD store where good health hits home. Back with more SEC roster talk next. 7:48 Thursday, February 20th, right here on Jocks 94.5. Watch live on YouTube, search Jocks 945. Listen online, jocksfm.com.
Bill Smith Buick GMC is the GMC Dealer of the Year, the national champ. They've done an amazing job for the last, I don't know, however many years, but they've really taken to the next level the last 5 by bringing home General Motors National Dealer of the Year. Guys, to think that we have the national champion just up the road from us here in Birmingham is an incredible, incredible opportunity for you to go and take advantage of the service and the savings and the inventory. The savings are off the charts. You go get a GMC Yukon Denali XL. $96,000 is the list price. They'll take down $10,000 off the sticker price. Gets you out at $86,610. It's an amazing deal. Amazing deal that you just won't find anywhere else. That's why 75% of their business is repeat customers. That's because you have a better experience when you shop with Bill Smith. Take the short drive to Coleman. You'll be glad you did. You can also shop online. Have delivered right to your driveway at BillSmithBuick.com.
Before we go to the next team on the list, talking, are there any all-time players on the roster? I want to thank Chuck St. Clair for sharing this with us. Said, thought y'all would enjoy this bombshell after all the NASCAR talk yesterday. Jeff Gluck tweets, holy crap, huge penalty just announced. Chase Briscoe was found to have a modification to the spoiler. He loses 100 points, 10 playoff points, and James Small gone for four races. The teams find $100,000. Massive stuff to start the year.
That is actually super dramatic.
That is disappointed that we missed that, but
that is legit dramatic.
You just don't alter your spoiler and get away with it. Thank you, Chuck, for tweeting that in.
Is that why we have spoiler alerts?
That's why NASCAR does, because you can't do that. And that is, wow, 100 points?
That's a lot.
It sounds like it.
Golly.
Don't know exactly what that does or means, but it's
means enough.
It's stiff.
Means you don't want them problems.
No. Let's go to the Ole Miss roster. One that I think maybe last 2-3 years we could have picked a guy or two out that we would have said, oh yeah, that's a top 5 player at that position all time. I don't know about on this roster this year with some of the guys that are gone.
Austin Simmons, quarterback, going to be a beast.
So here's what's interesting is you can say that you think it's crazy when people say DJ Lagway might have a chance to be in that category, but you will say that Austin Simmons can be in that category?
Some of it has to do with how many good quarterbacks played at Florida, though, when compared to how many great quarterbacks have played at Ole Miss. Like, he's got to beat Bo Wallace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Chad Kelly.
Chad Kelly put up numbers.
And who's the little guy that turned into a
Brent
receiver?
Schaefer?
Brent Schaefer.
This is he was there.
Twas
Shea Patterson, Jordan Teamu,
Shea Patterson,
Matt
better.
Corral.
Corral is a good one.
I'm not sure that. I don't think he'll pass Matt Corral.
No, probably not.
I don't think he'll pass Jackson Dart. I don't think he'll pass Eli or Archie. So,
yeah, probably not.
Maybe tougher than we think.
Maybe quarterback's better.
Anywhere else, I don't see any other guys.
JJ Pegues, fullback / D tackle,
is gone. But yeah, maybe
is he a top 5 guy?
Yeah, I don't.
Played both ways.
I'll give him the top 5 jumbo fullback role in Ole Miss football history.
Top 5 Wildcat fullback D tackle.
He is that. He is number 1. He can have it. All right, go to Mississippi State. Kind of same thing here. There's not a guy that I look at an individual position and say I absolutely think that he has a chance to be that guy. There's just not many of them right now. Seydou Traore at tight end maybe would be one that I would look at from a skill set perspective, like what he's capable of doing. But I don't. If you see another one you want me to slow down there, we can dive into it. But I don't really see it.
I don't really see one. Looking at the depth chart here.
Now Mizzou maybe just had a couple that are going to be gone off their roster. But when you look at what's coming back this season, I would say maybe center with Connor Tollison. I'd have to really do a dive into the top centers in Mizzou history, but I do think that he's a really good player.
Yet?
Haven't gotten to that. Haven't gotten to the old tape just yet.
I don't see anybody on defense.
No running back, no receiver going to be there. We don't think quarterback's really going to be to that extent, and I don't see a lot on defense either. So, and I would say if this were a couple other schools, Brett Norfleet maybe, but Mizzou's had some really good tight ends. So that would even be one that's more difficult to climb. Oklahoma would be the next team. This is going to be a tough one because you've had a lot of great players at a lot of positions and some all-time college football players at different positions. The only one that and this is one of their better positions, but Deion Burks maybe, but you'd still want to be looking at one good year, Greg, which would be.
I don't think it's enough to put you up there.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't. For a lot of those fans, you're not going to move up there at that point in time. You could maybe a Jaden Jackson at D tackle just because he's got potentially 2-3 more years. But there have been some good D tackles in Oklahoma football that you got to get past. That even still feels like a stretch. Is there one that sticks out for you from the Oklahoma roster?
Not really. To be honest with you, I really don't. I'm looking at this whole roster, and no, I don't think there is. Oklahoma's had some guys now. They've had some really good players for a long time. Like the last 20 years, Oklahoma football is just
you're talking when you talk safety. You talk linebacker, you talk running back, you talk receiver, quarterback, defensive tackle. It's just like
they're so good.
No,
so good.
Not going to happen.
Not happening.
So that's most of the teams. I think we have saved a couple of. I want to save the most fun conversation for after we visit with Dave Pash at 8:00. We'll go back and talk some Auburn, Arkansas from last night. Just get his thoughts on SEC hoops and where it is last night. Does he think we should have concerns about Alabama moving forward? If you think we should, let us know there. Before we get out of here, tell our listeners about Shannara Flooring.
Well, Shannara Flooring is a great place, and I've always appreciated the type of service that you receive. When you deal with Fu, and the company he's built is a company built on trust and integrity. They're the very best, and they keep 40,000 square feet of CoreTech flooring in stock here in the Birmingham area. They're the only dealer to stock CoreTech in the area. It's 100% waterproof, kid-proof, pet-proof, and it's flooring that actually brings significant value to your home or to your business. They're just so easy to clean and maintain. You can also get 12 months financing with approved credit, so call 205-518-6423, or you can go online at fooandyou.com.
Auburn gets to 24-2 last night with a 67-60 win against Arkansas. Dave Pash was on the call for ESPN. He will join us next to discuss Bruce Pearl's team right here on Jocks 94.5. Hour number 2 underway, Thursday, February 20th, Jocks 94.5. Appreciate you being with us. We talked a little bit of Auburn, Arkansas earlier in the show. Going to go right to the Buyers Right hotline now. Talked to Dave Pash, who was on the call last night. What was the concern, Dave, going in of sort of a hangover effect after that Alabama game? Or maybe what did you see? What did you notice about a team that was tested and had a tough, physical, mentally challenged game on the road Saturday affecting that Auburn team last night?
Hey, good morning, Paul. Good morning, GMAC. Yeah, I thought going into the game and talking with Bruce Pearl yesterday, he was hammering home to his team what happened the last time they played at home, which was a loss to Florida. And he was saying about, we don't want to be a team that has this great high followed by, 180-degree swing just because we think we've arrived. And yeah, I think Arkansas is really good. Jay Will and I were talking about that early in the game, just watching. It did not feel like it was a hangover for Auburn or a letdown or that they were reading their press clipping, so to speak. It just felt like, Arkansas is really good. I mean, they got probably more NBA players than Auburn does when you look at the big picture. I think it showed a lot of toughness. It was interesting, again, just, Janai Broome, as good as he is, it was really, Chaney Johnson and some of the other guys, Baker Mazzara, late in the second half making the winning plays. They've got a lot of different guys that can finish. And, I have not seen Duke in person, but Auburn's the best team that I've seen this year.
It's pretty high praise, and Duke's amazing for sure. Florida's great as well. There's so many good teams. You have seen Florida, and I know they played, and I know Florida got the better of them a couple weeks back, but it feels like Florida's kind of the same, and it feels like Auburn is maybe trending up. Is that a fair assessment from your vantage point?
Yeah, I think Florida, they're getting, obviously they've got, health on their side right now. I'll be curious. I've got their game in Tuscaloosa in a couple weeks. They're playing great. They have the win at Auburn. The SEC, I did the Big East for a long time and, grew up, watching the Big East. And
oh gosh, we're aware that you grew up watching the Big East. We know you went to Syracuse. Nobody cares here. We were talking SEC. You can give us a comparison's sake, but goodness gracious.
See, Cole, now what it was like working with Greg on a broadcast for so many years. You never get a word in. You just he constantly cuts you off before you can get to your point.
I would have immediately just gone to, do you think John Wallace is the most underrated player in Syracuse history? But it's okay.
What I was going to say was in 1985, the Big East had 3 teams in the Final Four. And a lot of people think that was the greatest conference of all time that year. I asked Coach Cal this yesterday. I asked Pearl this yesterday as well. They think this is the best, and they've been around a long time. This is the best conference they've ever played in. It's certainly the best this year. It's the best that I can remember. I think they should get 12 or 13 in. They're again, Arkansas is so good. And if you put Arkansas in the Big 12, you put Arkansas, the Big 12 is really good. They're the second best conference, but I still think you put Arkansas in the Big 12 and they're a top 4 team in that league. You put them in the ACC, they're the second best team. It's the best league I've seen in a long, long time.
Dave Pash joining us on the Buyers Right hotline, was on the call for ESPN for Arkansas at Auburn last night. It's the second consecutive team that has struggled from the perimeter against Auburn. And sometimes when we watch it, I think it's difficult to understand what the defense's true impact is on what a team is doing, say, from the perimeter. 3 of 19 last night for the Hogs from behind the three-point line. What grade would you give Auburn, or what impact would you give the Auburn defense for that?
Yeah, some of it was Auburn or Arkansas is just not a great three-point shooting team, and Avicic, who had been hot, just couldn't make anything. But outside of that, they do get after you on the perimeter. Denver Jones was really impressive to me. He's an elite defensive player. I had, watched him on television. I had seen the highlights. I had heard the coaches talk about him. I've heard other players talk about him, but to watch him, he gets after you. He's as good as any on-ball defender in the country. He's probably the best. I'm not sure there's anybody better. And their team defense, they communicate. They're so well coached. I think Bruce Pearl is probably one of the more underrated coaches in the country. Just what he's built there. And I think, if you defend like that, to go from a game where you're scoring over 90, and they had scored over 90 in 3 of their last 5, to play a game in the 50s/60s, it just shows you can win a lot of different ways, and that's the sign of a really good defensive team.
No question about it. When you watch them offensively, in the event in which team that they're playing, like Florida did a couple weeks back, they're hitting everything. Are they a team that you think is capable of winning a track meet based on what you've seen?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm not sure. I think one of the issues is how is the NCAA tournament games going to be officiated? In the I've been in the Pac-12 obviously for a long time, and let's just say a lot of the officials in that league, they blow their whistle a lot. That's as complimentary as I can get. In the SEC, it feels a lot like the NBA in that they let the guys play. They let the physicality go. They're not calling a hand check here or there, a bump here and there. They're just letting go. They're letting him play in the games I've done and seen. Is that how it's going to be called in the NCAA tournament? So if it is, I think you're going to see a team like Auburn, and I think you're going to have Florida and Bama and a couple other SEC teams right there in the mix to get to the Final Four. But if it comes down to a free throw shooting contest, if it's hard for teams to get out and run, and Auburn made a move last night with some great defensive plays that led to fast breaks, and a couple times Arkansas didn't get back. But I think if that happens and they can play defense, allowing them to get out and run, and it's not a game full of stoppages, then Auburn can go really far and win the whole thing.
Dave Pash joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline. I know you said you haven't seen Duke, Dave, and there's probably a couple others that you haven't seen in person, but just where do you put this field nationally as far as maybe real national championship contenders? How many teams, if let's say Auburn, Florida, Duke, a couple other teams are on that sort of tier one for you, how many teams are close to that? Is this a large field of teams that can actually go win a title? How do you view sort of the national picture heading into March?
Well, as I look at the SEC in particular, Cole, I still think Tennessee is really good. I had them early in the year. I think they're a team that can go on a deep run and win the whole thing. I'll be curious. I've got Texas A&M coming up. I'll be curious to watch them. They're not a great 3-point shooting team, and I'm just not sure that you can win a title these days in college basketball if you're not a really good shooting team. I think Houston. They're probably one of the top 5 teams. I think they're definitely a Final Four contender out of the Big 12. Had Texas Tech. I think they're good enough. Arizona, probably good enough. And then Duke for sure. I mean, I think 10 or 12 teams are truly capable. I'm sure that there are, Purdue maybe. I'm sure that there are some teams in the Big 10 that when they get into the tournament, depending on how the game's officiated, that are capable. Michigan's a hot team, but it's probably 10 or 12. That's usually what it is. And then you have a surprise team that makes the Final Four, but then when they get to the championship game or they get into the national semis, they're just not good enough to beat a team like an Auburn or a Florida or a Tennessee or a Bama.
Is there a team that you see, like Arkansas, I think is a good example, where they could maybe make a run in the SEC tournament and maybe play spoiler, steal and bid from the bubble teams or something like that? I mean, it's just so hard for me to see one with the depth and talent in this league. But I mean, I look at a team like Arkansas and catch them on the wrong day. It's not a good situation. So is there anyone that you kind of see down the list that could be problematic?
I think that's the team. And Bruce Pearl told us last night before the game, look, that's the team nobody wants to see in the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament. As I said earlier, they've got more NBA players than Auburn does. I was really impressed with Carter Knox. Ivisic is not going to shoot it that poorly. Nelly Davis is a really solid player. Thiero is an excellent player. They need more shooting, but if they get hot in the SEC tournament, knowing maybe that they have to win it to get in, and they may not. If they get 3 more wins, they finish 7-11 in the league. That might be good enough. Maybe if they lose in the first round of the SEC tournament, they wouldn't get in. But if they win 3 more games and even get 2 wins in the SEC tournament, that might be enough. But yeah, I think they're good enough. I thought earlier in the year maybe Georgia. I'll be curious how they play against Auburn Saturday. But I would say that's probably it, because most of the other teams in the conference aren't sleepers. They're tournament teams that are certainly good enough to win the SEC.
Dave Pash joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline. Before we let you run, Dave, I wanted to go back to Auburn for a moment. And you made a great point that there seems to be multiple players on that roster that can step up in different ways at different times, make big plays. Baker Mazzara, Chaney Johnson last 2 games has been great in multiple ways. Greg and I talking earlier in the show about how Pettiford's been sort of that spark plug when the offense was sluggish. Which role player, if we'll call him that, I guess, but they do seem to have just true depth, do you think is most important down the stretch, specifically in the postseason?
I think Jahad Pettiford, he's a McDonald's All-America. The rest of the players on that roster are excellent players that have either been at Auburn for a long time and have developed into excellent SEC players, or they've transferred from other schools. But, Jahad Pettiford is capable of winning you some games. And at this stage of the college basketball season, you're not a freshman anymore. You've played enough games, and the expectation for freshmen is so different now. Freshmen are expected to help you win a championship. So if you had to pin me down, Cole, I would say him, just because he's talented enough. We saw it against Duke, big games against Houston and Georgia. He got in foul trouble last night, but he's really talented, and he's a guy that I think could be dangerous for them as a player that's probably not at the top of the scouting report, but other teams are very aware of him just because of his talent level.
No, that's a great point. We appreciate the time this morning, Dave. Great stuff. Great call last night, and look forward to catching up soon.
All right, fellas.
Thank you.
Care.
Dave Pash of ESPN joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline for all your insurance, financial, and HR needs. It's Buyers Right Insurance, a Higginbotham partner. So Dave on the call for that Auburn game last night, and one that, kind of like what you said with Dave, Greg, won a different style fight from what it was previously. Maybe there are questions about if they get into more of a track meet style game in the postseason, it could be a little bit extra problematic. But you also feel like Auburn has the guys to be able to control that tempo. I mean, play with your back to the basket, do some different things defensively to slow things down. So they seem to be the team that is most well-rounded right now in college basketball.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're so much fun to watch. They're so talented. They play so well together. It's really been a joy. So a lot of fun. I will be curious to see how things go kind of moving forward. And obviously getting hot at the right time is of significant value, but they don't show many flaws unless a team just comes in shooting the lights out. There's not a lot that you can look at and say, man, I wish they did this better. You know what I mean?
And that's maybe, is that one of the problems you look at now for Alabama is those slow starts, and that, not something that you can qualify in a similar fashion that you can to turnovers, but Auburn gets out 9-0, Missouri gets out 12-0. I don't know how you alter that, how you fix that, especially when it's just a couple of layups or shots that aren't going down. But that looks like something else that maybe we can add to. I mean, it's been 80 consecutive minutes now. Alabama has not had a lead.
Yeah,
that's a crazy number to even think about.
Totally, and I think that this is something that they probably at this point might need to adjust a couple things, right? I mean, maybe a couple adjustments, a couple tweaks. They already messed a little bit with the starting lineup last night. I mean, they're trying things. I mean, I give Nate Oates tons of credit. He's not just sticking with the status quo. I mean, they're making tweaks. So I'm not sure what they need to do. I'm sure it might have something to do with, recruiting philosophy, but trying to get guys that are a little bit more blue collar and willing to do the dirty work on the defensive end is probably something they're going to continue to focus on. I think they thought they had that, but then again, I mean, team shot really well last night. Missouri played well. I mean, you got to kind of tip your cap sometimes. I mean, there were defended shots that went in. So it's easy to say that the sky is falling. I'm not there yet, but I am starting to become a little concerned about what's going on that side of the ball.
Alabama will get Kentucky at home, 5 p.m. on ESPN Saturday. You heard Dave Pash mention it. Auburn has Georgia Saturday at home, 3 o'clock on ESPN. So those are the games that are coming up next for the Tide and the Tigers on the basketball court. Speaking of Kentucky, they took down Vanderbilt last night, 82-61. 18-8 now for the Wildcats. They were 29 of 50 from the floor, 11 of 27 from behind the three-point line, 4 starters in double figures. But Vanderbilt struggle. 5 of 25 from behind the 3-point line. Shot 40% from the floor. It was not great for Vandy last night, and it's Kentucky's 8th 20-point win this season. That's the same total that they had last season. So when they get going, it feels like the Cats can really get going. It's just some of those inconsistencies show up with that ball club as well. We're going to go back to our SEC rosters. What all-time greats are currently on Southeastern Conference football team rosters, or even potential all-time greats? When you look at the prowess that some of these teams have, one of the more fun teams that we did not get to is going to be first off the bat next, right here on Jocks 94.5. $8:19 Thursday, February 20th, right here on Jocks 94.5. Glad you're with us. We're talking SEC football teams, their current rosters, and who may have an all-timer at any individual position. So we kind of made it top 5 at any position currently. Who would you go with? Who would you say maybe could turn into that? And it's a little bit of a projection. Nothing definitive, but who might be able to be that guy? And I think one of the more fun practices that we're going to have on any team is going to be South Carolina. When you look at the Gamecocks and you look at their roster, I think there are going to be a couple that stick out for folks, Greg, but do you see potential top 5 players all time at individual positions for the Gamecocks this upcoming season?
Yes. I think Lenore Sellers, by the end of his career, could be one of the top 5 quarterbacks in South Carolina history. Who's number one? Connor Shaw?
In passing yards, or just who do I rank number one?
Who do you rank number one?
I rank Connor Shaw number one. I think he is vastly underrated as all-time as an SEC football player. What he did with his legs, the wins. I think he's a great player and doesn't get the credit he deserves. He's probably one. You could make an argument. Todd Ellis, Steve Tannehill from back in the day need to be in that mix. Jake Bentley's going to be in the discussion. Garcia's obviously in the discussion. You've got, Spencer Rattler put up really good numbers and did really good things at South Carolina. He deserves to be in that conversation. Anthony Wright's one that played on some bad football teams, but probably deserves to be in that conversation based on some of the things that he did. But I'm with you. I think Sellers has a chance to get there. It's no matter what order you would go, I think it would probably be Shaw, Rattler, Ellis, Tannehill, Garcia, or Bentley next. And so for Lenore Sellers can sort of get into that group, I would say, yeah, it's definitely feasible, definitely possible, because he's going to put up yards on the ground and in the air. The problem might be just his cast and the teams he's going up against every year. I mean, this thing only looks like it's going to get more difficult for SEC teams.
Possibly.
You start stacking Big Ten teams at the front end of the schedule, it's not going to make life easier.
No, it's going to be hard, but I think that he's got a chance. I think him and Dylan Stewart are pretty obvious for South Carolina, but it helps to know that South Carolina does not have some long list of ridiculously talented quarterbacks and edge defenders. I mean, yeah, are there some? Of course. Yeah. Davion Clowney on the edge, of course, comes to mind. But I don't think it's insurmountable.
No. He's got a shot, and I do think it's a little bit longer list than maybe some people believe. Like John Abraham was really good at South Carolina. Clowney, you mentioned, is there. Kyle Kennard, who just played, by the way, is second all-time in single-season sacks. Now, Melvin Ingram played a little bit of both, more of an interior guy in the NFL, but did play outside some at South Carolina and was just a handful. I would say I wouldn't put Dylan Stewart ahead of Melvin Ingram right now. Not quite just yet. So he does have a couple guys that he's going to have to get past if he's going to find his way up there. But it feels like he has the makings of somebody that we're going to probably have next to Clowney when it's all said and done is maybe the two best edge rushers in South Carolina history. That sounds very possible.
Probably. I could totally see, without question, that being the way things go at the end of his career. Like if he's got that type of presence and he is that type of difference maker, he could certainly enter that conversation. He's got the ceiling to do it.
There's no doubt. Easier conversation for South Carolina than some of the other schools that we mentioned, and another school that's going to be a very difficult conversation almost any year, no matter who you have. It doesn't really matter. It's going to be Tennessee, because if you go offensive line, defensive line, running back, receiver, quarterback, they've got guys stacked forever. Safety, edge rusher, they got guys. And I'm just right off the bat, Greg, I don't see a guy that I think is going to be. I don't see a top 5 all-time player at any position on this Tennessee roster.
No, not at Tennessee.
And I think if you were going to maybe stretch on one, it would probably be Nico. And that's a tough list to crack.
It's a stretch.
I mean, there have been some really good Tennessee quarterbacks. And I don't know if I'm ready to put him there just yet.
He's not there just yet. Hate to break it to you. Great player. Possibly great player. We will see. But he's not there just yet. He's not. And what I think is funny is like Tennessee fans were dogging Nico at one point earlier last year. And it's like that's gone by the wayside. And now he can do no wrong. I'm trying to figure out what changed their mind.
I think just maybe later in the year, it wasn't this elite, all-worldly level that people just automatically assumed that that's what it was always going to be, which you know better than anybody is not always in that individual's control. I think maybe they started listening to some of the national noise of how Tennessee won a few games, and that was not going fast and not pushing the ball down the field on a regular basis. When you kind of look at the Alabama game, the Oklahoma game, and I respected that and actually complemented that you could go win games in different ways. I think maybe
totally
some of that noise coming from people that don't view it that way started to get to Tennessee fans, and they looked at it as, oh, well, that's Nico's fault because they're not just letting him cut it loose. Why would you if you could win the game without having to do that? So
he also was a liability early in the season, missing passes and not making great decisions. Like, I mean, he's a good player, got a lot of talent. Ball jumps off his hand. There's no denying that. No one's denying that. But he's not a guy that I want potentially controlling the outcome of what my team could be.
If I asked you, could you name, or how many could you name of the top 5 all-time leading passers in Tennessee history, if we were referencing yards, how many do you think you could name?
Oh my gosh. Not very many, probably.
Would you like to take a shot?
Sure.
Okay. Like you got number 1 covered.
Yeah, I think Peyton's pretty easy.
That would be number 1.
Got that one. I feel good about that one.
Yeah.
Todd Helton?
Todd Helton, no.
Jonathan Crompton.
This is the 11.
It's close. Who's the tall Bray?
Tyler Bray is number 4 all time in Tennessee passing yard history. That was kind of the name that I was looking for that I thought would surprise some folks.
Yeah.
7,444 passing yards, 69 touchdowns. By the way, Manning was over 11,000 yards. Not sure anybody's going to catch him. Casey Clausen would be number 2, 9,707 passing yards. Eric Ainge would be number 3, 8,700
I would have gone Dobbs over Ainge and Clausen.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of names outside the top 5 that a lot of people would have gone. Dobbs would be 5th all time. Andy Kelly 6th. Jarek Garantano 7th. Hendon Hooker 8th. T. Martin 10th. Joe Milton 12th, if you're just looking for some recognizable names. Nico Iamaleava already up to 21, by the way, all-time passing yards in Tennessee football history. So just kind of interesting numbers there when you're thinking about where some of the bigger names that, I mean, Heath Schuler's 13th, and he was a Heisman Trophy finalist. It's one of the better players in school history. Obviously, just different times and done some different things. There have been some good quarterbacks that have come through and played for Tennessee. I don't think any of us would deny that or doubt that. So we'll move on from Tennessee, and we have 3 teams that remain. We'll get to those 3 on the other side. First, I'll tell you about Game Day Men's Health and what they can do for you. If you are feeling on edge, if you are getting poor sleep, if you have a lack of energy, could be the effects of low testosterone. Game Day Men's Health wants to help you with that. You go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now, schedule a free consultation, and they're going to give you the free PSA test, free testosterone test, and tell you exactly where they believe your health is at the moment. And then they're going to give you options of programs they have of how they can help you. And you can save 10% on any of those services when you mention Cube and you walk in the front door. Locker room environment, low stress, not going to try to push you into different things that you don't need or don't want. Weight loss programs that they can help you with at Game Day Men's Health. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com today, and remember, minimal upfront cost for all of their programs. That means they're not going to charge you an arm and a leg just to get started. I told you, free consultation, free PSA, free testosterone test, just out of the gate at Game Day Men's Health. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com, schedule your free consultation today. Texas A&M, Vanderbilt when we return next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 8:31, Thursday, February 20th on Jocks 94.5. Talking college football rosters, specifically in the SEC right now, who may contain an all-time great. Top 5 at an individual position. Not top 5 in school history, but just at that spot. And we do have a couple of folks that have chimed in and have some questions about where we're going. Todd McEwen tweets in, at Todd from KY. He said, missed first part of the show. There is no one on Kentucky that could be the best ever, but who would you rather have, Deion Walker or Dwayne Robertson? The thing with Deion Walker was when he got going,
he took over a lot of games.
He got going. You would get the inconsistency of, the pad level too high and the motor not going in the same way. But if you need a guy that when he was on to go, it's hard to look past him. That would be tough because he could, like Greg said, he could take over a game. He did it a couple of times. It's just when he didn't take over games, he almost disappeared.
There were times that happened.
Also, Brandon, at Brandon Gallia, tweets in maybe a bold prediction, but I think Lawson Lucky could be a top 5 tight end for Georgia. Delp regressed after the team lost Bowers. Why? The emergence of Lucky. He does add the Georgia tight end all-time receiving list, which there's just a minimal gap between Brock Bowers and Orson Charles of 175 receptions to 94 receptions. Small gap.
Orson Charles. Wow.
Small gap from a yardage perspective also, 2538 to 1370.
Is that a name from the past or what?
It is, but that's there. See, this is a tough position because Leonard Pope had 65 catches, 10 touchdowns. You telling me that I think Lawson Lucky's got a great chance of getting past him? Randy McMichael has 90 catches, great career, but I saw the other things that he was doing. Like Benjamin Watson had 65 catches. Do I think Lawson Lucky's going past him? No. I think Lawson Lucky's going to have a hard time getting past Darnell Washington, and he only caught 45 passes. So there's a lot of other things that position does that don't show up on this sheet of receptions, yards, and touchdowns.
Yeah.
Or also rushes, by the way, which Brock had 19 for 193 and 5 touchdowns. We know the number 1 spot's not going to be taken over. But can Lawson Lucky get into the top 5? I think it's doubtful. Not impossible, but doubtful.
With all due respect, the position to me is not a receiving position. You need to do more than just be a receiver. I think Lawson Lucky is a great route runner. Smooth, loose hips, can turn and kind of moves very fluidly. There's a lot to like about his game, but we're talking about Georgia tight ends here, guys. I mean, that's a big time position. That's a big time position. I'd love to put him in there to tell, to acknowledge the greatness that was. He ain't there.
No.
Like he's not there.
Let's move on to our next team. And if you've missed earlier in the show, we're taking SEC teams, their current rosters, who may have a top 5 player all time at an individual position. And this is projecting. This is possibly, not saying definitively, but who is even close to it. Let's go to the Texas Longhorns because I think this can be an interesting discussion also. If you're looking at top 5 players all time, I think there are a couple here that we could have real conversations about. I know the one that everybody's going to want to start with is Arch Manning. Texas has had some good quarterbacks. I do think that there are 2 that are probably insurmountable, but I think it's probably, and we haven't seen a ton of them, Greg, and this is a lot of projecting, but after the top 2, I think it's more than feasible for Arch Manning.
Totally. Definitely feasible. I mean, I think if you look at, and it could be top 1. I mean, he's the Heisman frontrunner as of this moment. Now, is he going to ultimately win it? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but he's got a chance. So I'd say that's a pretty good starting point, all things considered.
But Colt McCoy, Vince Young feel almost insurmountable. The only reason I feel like this is not an X's and O's take, but
you don't think Arch Manning can pass Colt McCoy? Might not be able to pass Vince Young unless he wins the championship. But
I don't know. Maybe standing on the sideline next to Colt McCoy on a Texas playoff game kind of gave me a different a different vibe of what he sort of is in that school's lore.
I love Colt. Good friend. Good
maybe
friend of mine,
maybe I think maybe I'm looking at this more as how fans would rank them, where they would be from that perspective.
I think part of it though has to do with he's from Texas. You know, I get
his name's Colt, for God's sake. He played quarterback at
gracious
Texas.
alive. Why are we even having the discussion? I mean, I'm with you. I understand what Colt is.
His name is Manning, so that also gives him some credence.
That's not a bad name to have if you're going to play quarterback.
Colt, 13,253 passing yards, most in school history. The other name, I think, obviously, that's not going to be there statistically would be Vince Young, and for blatant reasons. I don't know what it would take to move past Vince Young.
You can't unless you win a Natty and a Heisman.
And win the Natty on a walk-off?
No, Natty and Heisman will get it done.
Okay.
But the problem with Vince Young is there's always going to be the argument that, he should have won the Heisman. Didn't, but should. So that will always be the challenging pushback there when it comes to that.
But there are a couple of others that'll be close.
Colin Simmons is going to make it.
I was going to just say from a quarterback perspective of that he still has to pass. Quinn Ewers is third all time in school history in passing yards. Had a great career, back-to-back playoffs.
Love Quinn, but he's easily passable, I think, in the eyes of Texas fans.
Major Applewhite?
Major Applewhite will always have a soft spot in everyone's heart at Texas, but he ain't in this discussion.
Okay. So very good chance that could happen. I'm with you on Colin Simmons. I think if you're talking, I don't think Texas has had, because Texas has had a lot of great defensive players.
Yeah.
I don't think that they have had a lot of the great edge defenders maybe that some people believe. I think it's actually a position where he could not easily, but very realistically end up being the best that we've seen at that spot in school history.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I have a hard time thinking that Colin Simmons won't potentially be
they don't have a player, Greg, in the top 5 all-time sack leaders that played after 1983.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking about Steve McMichael and Tim Campbell and Tony DeGrate and Bill Acker. Those are guys played in the 70s, early 80s. So
there hasn't been a guy.
There hasn't.
I mean, they've had good D linemen.
D tackle, yes, you've had some really good ones, but
yeah, like 2 years ago.
And they've had some others, but that's not. Yeah, they haven't. They hadn't had that really at all.
That's not been a position of strength over the course of time.
Can Ryan Wingo become one of those guys?
They've had some good wideouts, man.
They have.
I think Xavier Worthy's sitting at or near the top in a lot of numbers.
He is third all-time career touchdown receptions. He is fourth all-time career receiving yards. Roy Williams has to those. Roy Williams, as far as career yards, 1 and 2 with he and Shipley. Single season is Shipley at 1485. Single game, he's got that against UCF, 273. Worthy had 261 against Oklahoma. Receiving touchdowns, I mentioned Roy Williams, then Jordan Shipley, then Worthy. Single season, it will be Shipley and Williams. So I just think that they've had some really good ones, but when you think about the all-time college football players, they haven't had many receivers in that regard. So I think Wingo has a chance. The main problem for him might be in Sark's offense. He's
how much they spread the ball.
Yeah, they're not just going to come to you 15 times a game.
Yeah, you're not going to get fed.
So that could be the one thing that kind of works against him. Honestly.
Potentially.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's receivers to me. It's a hard list to crack, but yeah, I could see Wingo maybe being there. It's just early.
Here's a good one for you. Bert Auburn.
Don't. But yeah, probably.
I'm just throwing it out there because he is already the school's career leader in field goals made with 66.
It's also been there, I feel like, for 7 years.
He's about to play his 5th year.
Well, it's not like they go 3 and straight to the league.
He is first all-time single season field goals made. He holds the school record for consecutive field goals made. So yeah, I think that's not that I'll say it, not that we care, but he could, I guess, get there. Like we know what we're talking about there, but either way, he has a lot of school records when it comes to kicking. Texas A&M would be next up. We will discuss the Aggies and their roster as far as, I don't know if this is going to be as fun as some of the others, Greg, when you're talking about A&Ms, but it does feel like that there are a couple of guys that maybe garner a little bit of a conversation, something that you might need to have if you are 10 years or less away from retirement. A conversation with our friend and wealth advisor, Tad Hill, who always adds value on Jocks, your trusted retirement planning partner. Tad is the co-host of the Retire with Freedom radio and TV shows in Birmingham and Huntsville. Also been designated by Forbes as the #1 financial securities professional in the state of Alabama multiple years running. Tad, what do you have for us today?
Thanks, Cole. What I'd like to do today is talk about something that none of us really like to think about, which is market volatility. And particularly as you near retirement, it's very important that you're not overexposed to risk with too much of your investment money, because for most of you, you're going to need that money to live on. If you've got too much risk in your investments and we go through a big market downturn and you're pulling money out at the same time, now you're having to sell when markets are down to pay your bills. That's called sequence of returns risk. That and the strategies on how to insulate you from that, we cover in our Retire with Freedom course that we do at our office on Valley Dale Road. If you would like to attend the next course, we cover that and many other strategies for retirement planning. Text JOCKS at 205-988-0006, 205-988-0006.
This is a paid placement. Investment advisory services are made available through AE Wealth Management. For more information about Forbes rankings, visit Forbes.com.
Now Taxes is using Credit Karma, where TurboTax
Wimp Sanderson coming up at 9 a.m. Brought to us by Coke and Piggly Wiggly. He's with us every Thursday. We will discuss Auburn and Alabama basketball with the coach. We're going to continue our practice on current SEC rosters. Who may have an all-time player on their roster? Just two more teams to get to. And I think some interesting conversations with both of these teams as we go to Texas A&M, Greg. And if you've missed portions of this, we're just looking for a player who might possibly end up as a top 5 player all time in school history at their position. Not overall, but just at their position. So when you look at A&M, do you see anybody who may fall into that category?
Not at A&M right now. There are a few coming up, but man, at A&M, it's hard for me because I think there's so many great A&M players. That's what's been fun about this practice so far. Is thinking back through some of the great players that had played at A&M and South Carolina and places like that you just hadn't thought about in quite a while. I don't think there is one right now though on that team. Is there one for you?
The only position that I think would stick out for me would be running back, but there have been some really good backs play at A&M.
Yes.
So it would not be easy. And then the other problem is some of the backs that may fit that category have not been able to stay healthy. And so you're going to have to be a guy that's on the field. Your availability is going to have to be there if you're going to end up being an all-time player at any school, at any position. And I don't know if Ruben Owens is going to end up being that. Your all-time leading rusher in Texas A&M football history is Darren Lewis, 5,012 yards, 44 rushing touchdowns from 87 to 90. Curtis Dickey would be next. Then Travion Williams, Cyrus Gray, Greg Hill, Rodney Thomas, Isaiah Spiller, Dante Hall is 10th. So Devon Achane, 16th. Javorsky Lane, who's in my top. Johnny Manziel's a top 20 rusher all time in A&M football history.
That's pretty wild. Not surprising, but
number 18, 2,169 career rushing yards, 30 career rushing touchdowns. So you see those names, and the numbers don't feel. I mean, Isaiah Spiller, 7th all time, just under 3,000 career yards. So the problem I think sometimes with this practice when we run into this sort of back and forth, Greg, is it goes back to what you said about Texas quarterback. Not only are you going to have the numbers, and not only got to have make massive plays, probably against your rival or rivals.
Yeah.
You're going to have to make massive plays in a lot of big, meaningful games.
A ton.
To be considered this kind of a guy.
I think that's the hardest thing. And it's a little dependent on who's come before you. Like some places, for instance, like Lagway, like we talked about earlier in the show, like he'd crack the top 5 in a lot of schools. Like if Lagway played for South Carolina, how would we feel about prospects cracking that list?
Probably in now.
How would we feel about Lagway cracking the top 5 at Texas or even Texas A&M? Probably pretty good.
A little bit better chance.
Right? But at at Florida, it's unlikely because what it's going to take, not only a national championship, but likely a Heisman Trophy as well, because they have 3 quarterbacks that have already won a Heisman. And then they have a handful that have won a national championship or at least competed for a national championship. So I think it's tough. It's a tough practice, but a fun one for sure.
I don't think there's any doubt. So we'll go to Vanderbilt to kind of, by the way, Le'Veon Moss currently 36th all time in Texas A&M football rushing history.
I think that's a part of the problem with the running back spot though at A&M. They just have 4 guys.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, there's a lot of dudes.
All right. So we'll move on to Vanderbilt. And I think this is fairly easy that you got a couple that actually could get there.
Yeah, for sure.
Specifically, a tight end should be the first one that people talk about. I mean, he may be in the top 5 now all time.
Yes.
Tight ends in Vanderbilt football history with what he's already done. And then Diego Pavia is going to be the other easy conversation. I mean, number one, you beat Alabama at quarterback. Like that's kind of some of the things that we were talking about. That's gonna propel you above a lot of guys because there's a lot of Vanderbilt quarterbacks never did that. So that's gonna give you some clout. Now, numbers wise, is he gonna catch a few of the other guys? No, probably not. But if he gets a couple more big wins this year, that could easily propel him into that conversation.
Good. I think of Pavia and really with Vanderbilt, I think it's probably a little less about numbers and a little more about moments. And if you can deliver some key moments, because the wins have been so few and far between, but who cares if you stack 325 passing yards in a loss? It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter at all. I think it has everything to do with, can you deliver big upsets, big moments where people are making note of what Vanderbilt's capable of? That is a far more encouraging place to be when keeping a list of top 5 players in any position. So they've already delivered one of the biggest wins in school history.
Yeah.
So maybe one more this year and you're probably cooking with gas.
Another guy that I would throw out, and I don't know if he'll get the run, the carries, and they have actually had some good players at this position, but I love Cedric Alexander. I think if he could just be featured and get 25 to 32 carries a game, he could be a guy that puts up numbers worthy of being in that conversation. I don't know if he'll get that because of how the quarterback runs and the read option plays, different things that they have. He's just not going to get, all right, kid, here's a pitch right, pitch left, 15 times a game. That's not the way it's going to work. But if you're talking about just overall ability, skill set, like that's a dude that I think has that opportunity to be able to get there. Don't know if he'll get the chances really with how they run that offense. Do you want to take a shot quickly at all-time leading passer in Vanderbilt history?
Man.
You know the name.
I mean, Jay Cutler?
No, Jay Cutler is second, 8,697 yards, 59 touchdowns. He's second in both of those categories.
Shermer?
Kyle Shermer, number one.
Wow.
8,865 yards, 64 passing touchdowns.
That's cool.
Yep. More passing touchdowns and fewer interceptions than Jay Cutler in his Vanderbilt career. Number three, you will not get. Greg Zolman.
Oh, gosh. I knew Zolman would be up there.
Oh, Greg. 7,981 yards. He did have 41 career passing touchdowns. He also had 46 interceptions.
Is that a lot?
Whit Taylor, Kurt Page, Eric Jones, Ken Seals, who I'm not even sure if he was a starter for an entire season. Threw a beautiful ball, but I didn't. Jordan Rogers is 8th. Damian Allen, Chris Nixon, John Gromos, Larry Smith, Mackenzie Adams.
Oh, yeah.
A.J. Swan is 14th. He was never even
I remember Mackenzie Adams.
Austin Carter Samuel, 17th. Mike Wright is 18th. Diego Pavia is currently sitting at 19th all-time career passing yard.
That's insane.
I think when we're sitting here a year from now, if he doesn't get injured this year, we're talking about Diego Pavia as a top 3 all-time Vanderbilt quarterback. That
is insane. Not saying it's not possible.
I bet the house on it.
It's just insane when you think about that list.
It's not a lot of great. Not.
No. Shocking.
Hey, Watson Brown's 35th.
Think about how many guys that you just listed that did not start more than 1 year.
That are in the top 20.
Think about that. Ken Seals probably
some guys in the top 30 that weren't even a regular starter in a particular season.
All right, we got to look this up. I need to know how many starts Ken Seals has. I'm about to look it up right now. Hang on, stand by.
Ken Seals is the 7th all-time passing leader of Vanderbilt history. 3 years, 27 games. I don't have the starts, but 27 games.
I need starts.
He completed 60% of his passes, 4,292 yards, 28 touchdowns to 22 interceptions.
Not important. Why do you got to go there?
Greg Zolman is your all-time interceptions leader in Vanderbilt history with 46.
I can't even get starts.
Kurt Page, 44.
I can't even get starts on Ken Seals. I'm going to get it, though.
Cutler's top 5 all-time in interceptions in school history. 4th, 36.
Are you surprised? I feel like he should be higher.
Not in college. I didn't feel like he gave it away that much.
All right, we're about to find out how many starts on Ken Seals. You want to take a guess?
11.
At Vanderbilt.
Correct.
Career starts. No, more than that. A lot more than that.
18.
Nope.
14. 16.
22. Do you want to
does not feel like that.
Do you want to take a guess at how many wins?
5.
Under.
No. In 22 starts?
22 starts.
20 to 23. 4?
Under.
3?
Under.
I just no way.
He's got 2 career wins in 22 career starts. Those 2 wins came
that's why
at Colorado State
didn't think he
in 2021 when they won 24-21, and then they beat UConn at home 30-28.
It's a big one.
We are back. I'm a Vanderbilt guy. I'm Team Vandy from now on. You can start 22 games and win 2.
It's pre-Jim Mora era, though. They got that UConn win.
You can win 8% of your starts.
And be top 10.
What's your win percentage?
Top 10 passer all time?
8.
The coach, Wimp Sanderson, talks hoop next. Welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 9 a.m., hour number 3 underway. Thursday, February 20th, right here on Jocks 94.5. He joins us each and every week thanks to our friends at Coke and Piggly Wiggly. It's the coach, Wimp Sanderson. Coach, how are we doing today?
I'm okay. I usually start off with a football question to get you guys talking, but I'm going to save that football question for a little bit later. Alabama had a rough time last night. Auburn had a rough time too, but got by that game, 67-60. Neither team shot it very well. One of them, I think, made 3 threes, and one of them made 4. I think Auburn made 4, but they got by. Anytime you play poorly and don't shoot it well and still win, it's certainly a plus for you. Alabama had a lot of turnovers to start the game. They also didn't defend the 3 quite as good as they needed to on fast breaks. Missouri shot the ball off the break, shot 3s on the break, and the Missouri home crowd was there. They were really bad last year, and they recruited a lot of guys and a lot better. And so, with 5 games to go, Auburn is the leader, and they played great against Alabama, no doubt about that. And had a chance to mention that. And got by in a game that they didn't play well in. So they only have the 1 loss. Alabama and Florida tied for second place. Alabama's got a tough schedule. Auburn goes to Texas A&M and Kentucky. So I'll talk to you about anything you want to talk about.
How do you fix the inconsistencies on defense, Coach? I mean, I feel like offensively they get after it, but on defense, for whatever reason, there's just lapses. I know Missouri shot it well last night, but we've seen this at times throughout the course of the season. How do you fix it?
Well, you fix it by being a little bit more physical. They didn't feel like they were very physical inside, and the big kid from Missouri came in there, Mark Mitchell, and just ate their lunch, and so they got more out of there and went with a little bit bigger, stronger lineup. Trying to find themselves. Diabate started playing a little bit more, and he played 28 minutes. Stevenson got cut back to 22, and so it was trying to find the toughness in that particular game, and you've got to contest shots. Look, you have to defend the dribbler. If you don't defend the dribbler, people are going to get things on you, and that's very important. And you have to defend. You have to defend after they miss the three. You've got to get second, third shots. Now that just goes in one ear and out the other. And nobody says a yawn when you say that, but that's critical. You've got to get a lot of shots, and you've got to be strong inside and get the 2-point shot back in, put it back in. And certainly Missouri had guys that could do that. Had a home court advantage. They played to that home court advantage. They'd already beaten Florida. Everybody's about as good as everybody else, with the exception of Auburn is a step ahead of everybody. But the rest of them are about as good as everybody else is. It just takes a bad matchup or a bad game, just like you might have a bad game throwing it, or somebody might have a bad game catching your passes, and that's sort of what happened. In turning a thing, you can't turn the booger bear over all the time. And they do that. Now I know that Missouri went to the foul line 47 times. That's a lot of times, and made 31 free throws, I think it was. But the fact of the matter is, fouls a defensive mistake. Part of them were not defensive mistakes. Part of them were just, on a rebound you foul somebody. But you got to keep the other team off the line. You got to make some threes and defend the threes.
The coach, Wimp Sanderson, joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline. We asked a couple folks this week about Janai Broome and that ankle not being 100%. Do you try to get him a game off here down the stretch? You're playing for a regular season title, obviously seeding, but is there room to say, hey, we're just going to sit you out for this one to try and get that thing as close to 100% as we can?
No, you don't. You play him a little bit, maybe less than when you get a lead, but you stay with what you've been doing. He is the kind of guy that's not completely a postman. He plays on the perimeter. He shoots the three when he can. He's a little bit of everywhere. He may be a little bit, and your ankle is a real problem for you too, because the ankles make you, really hurt you in jumping and shooting and so forth. Makes a lot of your shots short because you really can't get up to shoot it. But I wouldn't. I would keep him where he is, and if I could lessen his playing time and. He has spent, from my friends down at Auburn, all day long in the training room trying to get that thing better, and he has got it better. And you just need his strength, his abilities, and you don't need to with a 1-game lead before the Alabama lost again. You need him to play, and boy were they good against Alabama. They were terrific, and were they good last night? No, they didn't shoot it very well, but they did a good enough job. But Arkansas doesn't shoot it well either, and so it's a combination of neither one of them had a very good night shooting the basketball. But when that happens to you and you get by, then you feel good about it.
What do you make of the turnaround coming off the emotional game that we saw last Saturday and having to go to Missouri or having to go home and play against an Arkansas team? Obviously, Auburn got a little sloppy out of the gate, but they were able to weather the storm. Bama never really could quite get the train back on the tracks. So how do you handle a turnaround like that after an emotional win or loss?
Yeah, a good question and a very difficult thing. Auburn has 3 home games after an emotional game. And when the emotion goes where you win or lose, the emotion is there. And when you're back at home and you're playing somebody that's not quite as good, yet you can't afford to lose to them. But it's much better shape for you to play 3 straight home games than it is to go to Missouri. That's just the way the schedule fell. But I was always concerned after we played Auburn. I was always concerned about how we were going to play, even Kentucky, the next game. Were we going to be ready to play? And that's a terrific question. But because you're concerned about that, they got the mind on the win, or they got the mind on the loss, or whatever might happen. And you've got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and every now and then beat somebody on the last shot. The way Auburn did against Tennessee, which was a darn, Tennessee missed theirs, and Auburn came down the floor, and Kelly busted one, and they won that game. So it's going to be very interesting. Basketball is a hard game to decide. Everybody's looking at who's starting. The starting factors is you start them, but for matchups, basically, the only people that are really worried about the starters is mothers and daddies and the girlfriends. The coaches are trying to figure out who's the best to start, take a look at, and see how you're going. But the mothers and daddies want to say, my kid's starting at Alabama or Auburn, and so it makes them much more happy. When you got a kid like the Mitchell kid did last night for Missouri, he ate their lunch. So it's going to be interesting in these last 5 games. And we'll see what happens. And then you have the SEC tournament, and I found an excuse for myself. They say when you play in the SEC tournament, you get really tired to play in the NCAA, and so I've used that now as an excuse. We got to the final game 9 out of 12 years. And then when we got to the NCAA, we couldn't get past the final 16. So I'm using that as an excuse that we were tired. Not really, but that comes to my mind. So what happens here, folks, before y'all let me go, is that it gives you a chance, if you're in Auburn, maybe Alabama, more so in Auburn, maybe in Florida, to be able to play your first round in Atlanta, and that's big. Atlanta's much better for your fans. Auburn's going to follow the team. Alabama's going to follow it to some extent, not like Auburn does. And they're going to have a home court advantage in Atlanta. And I think that's you got sent out west. I was sent out west my last time at Alabama. It's a booger bear to go out there, because if you win 2, and we did, you've got to stay out there another week. It's no use coming home. And it makes it difficult for you. That's about all.
I got one for you real quick, Coach.
I want to ask you. Okay, go ahead.
We talked about Alabama's last 2 games. They start out 9-0, 12-0. Would you try to seriously alter anything at the beginning of games? Do anything different? Does the lineup need to change? How can you help your team get off to better starts in games to give yourself a better opportunity to win?
Not turn it over. I think that's the big factor. Rebound defensively, but the turnovers are too high. The fouls defensively are not good. But you may want to change the lineup. I think Alabama kept Nelson out of the game longer than they usually do. He was only in there 18 minutes because he turned it over pretty early. But just not turn the basketball over, shoot good shots, and play as hard as you possibly can. And know that's the only thing you can do. You just go through periods of time where your shot doesn't fall. But the guy that shoots the basketball the best in the SEC continued to shoot it the best last night from the 3, and they didn't get to him well enough. And they got to him a couple of times, and he still made it. But those are big things. I want to ask you something. I want to know how hard it is for a kid to have the mindset, and I'm not being funny, to have the mindset to be an offensive lineman. And the reason I say that is you get no credit. The running back gets the credit. You're not thought about as being the reason that you won the game. And it's all. And I always ask y'all one football question. Greg may want. I don't know. He may want to answer it for you. But it's a mindset that's a different mindset than most people would think, because they want to be flashy, they want to be out front, they want to be good. What's the mindset of being an offensive lineman?
That unselfish portion of it, I think, has to be there. I do think overall it has morphed a little bit more recently, and there has been a lot more me that has moved into it than there was maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. But I think more so than not getting credit, Coach, is just the understanding of physically what you're going to be asked to do on every play. And that's where the difference in mentality has to be. And I don't know if you can like really work that into somebody, if that can just happen. I think you almost have it or you don't. And it's the desire to move people against their will. Not a lot of people have that.
As I think about it as a fan standpoint, I'm saying to myself, I tell you what, offensive linemen don't get as much NIL money as everybody else, because the defensive guys are more showy, tackle better, the quarterbacks are better, looked at better. I think as a fan of football, and I love football, I don't know much, that the NIL money for them doesn't come as quickly as the NIL money does for the other positions. I don't know if that's right or wrong. You nailed me on that one.
I don't think that's true, Coach, to be honest with you. I think the big boys are getting plenty. Especially considering, how few and far between the good ones are. So I think there's value there, whether you like it or not. I do have one more question for you, a little bit off the topic there. Smashing dry erase boards has been a topic of debate. Was there ever a time in which you decided in frustration to maybe throw a chair towards an official or smash a clipboard or anything like that?
My thing with officials was getting out. We had a box, and they like to catch me out of the box.
Yeah.
And they would say, I said this on the show before. They would say in the dressing room, because I asked them, watch it when we're down at the far end and Wimp watches, see if his feet out of that box. I kicked a can of food at the halftime of Auburn game where the sandwiches are already there to eat after the game.
Wait, what?
I kicked the basket the way we were playing, and I kicked my food through a ham sandwich or something. So
did it hurt your foot?
No, it didn't hurt my foot. No, those sandwiches in there. I didn't know they were in there, and I was mad as crap. I thought it was at Mississippi State. One of my kids called me the other day and said, "Coach, you told that on the show that was at Auburn." I said, "Well, I've already told the story about." That didn't go along with it. I told the story about I was playing so poorly at Auburn in one game, and I jumped their fannies as I was capable of doing pretty bad at the half, and I said to him, and on top of all of that, just as I came off the floor, Barkley winked at me, and they knocked the door down, getting out there to play. And so
wow,
that wasn't kind of in line with what you said, but. And I will admit one other thing to you. I knew a person in Auburn who was not particularly a basketball fan, like me, and I asked them to write a letter to my team and tell us how sorry we were. And I needed it to be postmarked Auburn. I didn't need anything like that. So they wrote a letter to my team telling us, I don't know if I still have the letter or not, telling us how sorry we were and how bad Auburn was going to beat us. And it came in the mail and came to my office, and I went down and put it on the wall. We had a couple of guys who weren't sure about the letter. They thought maybe it was rigged, but they weren't sure. Out of the 10 or 12 guys I had, 9 or 10 of them thought it was real. And so I did those kind of things. I mean, that's no big deal. I mean, I guess. But it was back then when I was coaching, I would tell our kids that every game counts the same, one win or one loss, and I would lie to them and say, no, except Auburn. So we're playing 16 games, and then two count more than the others. So we were recruiting against Auburn, and we were recruited against Gene Bartow, who came in as the coach at UAB, and I had a no name, so I felt like I needed to do everything I could to win to make people think I could do halfway decent, because they didn't think so. So that's what it goes. No.
You do what you had to do, right, Coach?
I did what I thought was the best thing to do in particular games. I fretted, and nobody came around me the week of Auburn. They stayed away from me completely. And even when I was assistant coach, I had the Auburn game was my game for the other coach when he was there. So I did what I needed to do the best I could. Anyway, I'll hush and tell you that Piggly Wiggly and Coca-Cola are terrific. Piggly Wiggly is a terrific place to go in and get whatever you need, meats, vegetables, whatever. You walk out with a smile on your face. And Stanley, in fact, I'm having lunch with Stanley tomorrow, who kind of runs Piggly Wiggly, and Coca-Cola has been a great product for a long time. You guys are good. I appreciate you letting me be on, and I'll talk to you next week.
We appreciate that, Coach.
All right. Thank you.
That's the coach, Wimp Sanderson, joining us on the Buyers Right hotline. He joins us every Thursday, thanks to our friends at Coke and Piggly Wiggly. Some different college football news that we need to get to. There's been a little bit of a problem with a newcomer at a certain college football program. If you're having problems getting into a new home, though, Gusty Goulas and the Gusty Goulas Group can help. They've only served 3,000 home buyers and sellers in the greater Birmingham area. So they're going to know what products are coming to market. They're going to know what real estate's going to be available and probably what they're going to be able to get for your home. And that's what they're going to be able to do best for you. Since 2012, Gusty Goulas Group recognized both nationally and locally as greater Birmingham, Alabama's #1 team in homes sold. Gusty Goulas Group serve more than 3,000 home buyers and sellers, so they're going to know everything you need to know about Central Alabama real estate. They invest thousands of dollars in the latest tools, social media, photographers, and more, whether Facebook, Instagram, radio, marketing, a crucial part of Gusty Goulas' real estate success. Call 205-542-1996. Google Gusty Goulas Group today. You'll see over 830 5-star Google reviews. Or just go to gustygoulasgroup.com yourself today and start packing. An update on a college football transfer next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 9:22, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. I'm going to get back to some college football here in just a moment. Luke Fickell gets an extension from Wisconsin, Greg. He'll go now through March of 2032. Necessary move?
No. I don't understand it at all.
Doesn't feel like it.
I love Luke Fickell, but that seems like an aggressive play.
Who was trying to kick that door down?
So the possibility of him returning to Cincinnati in the event in which Satterfield doesn't do well this year.
He would rather have that than Wisconsin?
No, but it's a little bit like
hit the reset button.
Why did John Calipari go from Kentucky to Arkansas?
Okay.
You know, I think hit the reset button, like you said, kick the can down the road a little bit.
5-7 last year. Extension through 2032. Are we still doing the recruiting thing with these extensions? That the coaches are convincing administrators they have to have them because people are recruiting against that?
I mean, someone had to have been sniffing around. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, if you want me to be honest with you.
It just feels weird. There's no doubt about that. All right. Before we go into a little bit more college football news, with all the transfers that are happening and guys moving from one place to another, girls as well, if you were going to move, Greg, who would you call?
It'd be Crocker Movie Search, our local company owned by an Iraq War veteran, Eric Crocker. Crocker believes in hiring movers you can trust to complete full background checks and run drug tests on every single employee. These are good guys. And you can trust them in their home. You need your whole home packed to move. You're coming to headquarters, moved across country, or you just want them to come rearrange your living room. These guys got you covered. They also do deliveries for furniture that you've purchased and need to get to your home. So call or visit them online today for a free quote. The website is CrockerMovieServices.com. It's CrockerMovieServices.com. Support your veterans by choosing Crocker Movie Services for your next move.
Who would you say is the highest profile college football transfer this year?
Carson Beck.
Wasn't a great night for he or his girlfriend, Hannah Cavender, not Cadaver. Had a couple of cars stolen overnight.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's Hannah Cavender's SUV ultimately was found, but police are still trying to locate Carson Beck's Mercedes and Lamborghini.
One of each?
One of each. Stolen.
Nothing says old money like a Mercedes and a Ferrari.
So Carson Beck's start down in Miami, not going as well as he would have hoped.
Feels like LoJack has the perfect NIL opportunity right here.
This feels right.
Would be great.
I mean, it makes all the sense. Imagine wanting a Lamborghini. I mean, don't get me wrong. We all want one, but imagine actually asking for that in part of your NIL package, a depreciating asset. Whereas like some guys are asking for 3 townhomes that are now in rental pools and they're creating generational wealth. No, I'll take the Lambo.
Whatever floats your boat.
Yep. I'll take the one that I can, easily 1031 out of at some point and create some rental revenue. And
maybe Carson Beck can get a deal with the club. Not up on the mountain here.
I'm going to say the club?
Not up on the mountain here in Birmingham, but the like the red gimmick that goes on your steering wheel.
Ooh, they still make that?
They do.
Love that. We're back.
Yeah.
You got my attention. In.
They are on sale for $51.99 at AutoZone.
Well,
Club 900 is also out for $29.99. Yellow version, I believe, for smaller vehicles. But yeah, you can still get the club.
The club.
Get the LX series for $56.
LX.
Wasn't there a time when you just kind of, I'm sure most people didn't even lock it. They just put it on there for people to say, you know what, go to another car.
I don't know.
I'm surprised stealing cars is still profitable.
I feel like I can look up on my car right now where it's at. It's like connected. You can find it. What do? Do you disengage the locator?
Well, that's what I'm saying. With everything digital is like taking a car to the chop shop and fixing it up and then flipping it pretty quick. Like, is that still?
They're never going to
How
find
real
this.
is that?
Because that's the other thing I was thinking too. Like they have to have the keys or the key fob, right? You can't like back in the day, like just stick something or hot wire it. Like you have to have the actual key. Like you get out the car and it starts beeping at you.
They probably got some MacGyver hack into the system gimmick that they can start it with.
MacGyver.
Club's got a utility lock also for your kerosene canisters, your bike, your grill, not the one in your mouth. But yeah, you can get that at Walmart for $31.
Heck yeah.
If you don't want anybody taking your gas grill.
Well,
the club. I haven't heard that in 30 years.
I'm honestly curious. How many Lambos are just cruising the streets? I'm serious right now. Like, how do you steal a Lamborghini? Oh, shoot, they'll never find this.
You could get away.
There's like 300 of them.
To be fair, it's Miami, isn't it?
It's true. There's 300 on every street.
250 are down there.
Yep.
If you were still in Athens,
your car payment's more than your house payment. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I just don't get it. But
Lamborghini in 2023 sold more cars than ever, breaking the 10,000 barrier.
Okay. It's international, though.
It is.
So how many stateside? Because I could understand, like, in Monaco. I mean, all right, there's probably a few Lambos bouncing around there. I get that. I could see it in Abu Dhabi or, in some places there in Europe.
In 2023, 3,000 Lamborghinis were sold in the United States.
3,000. Okay. Makes sense. There's probably 3,000 Fords, GMCs, and Chevys sold a day.
I'd probably say over.
Easily. Each. Toyotas. I mean, 3,000 a day. And you're going to go after the one that someone tells me they're going to find that car.
I don't know.
Could be pros, but tell you what makes a lot of sense too. I wonder if he has to cover his own insurance. Might have to.
My assumption would be no, that was handled by the dealership, but I don't think dealership's going to be happy right now.
What kind of Mercedes did he have?
I think he had the SUV.
A G-Wagon?
No. Mercedes or Lambo makes a different SUV.
Oh, he had a Lamborghini?
I don't know what his Mercedes was, but I think their Lamborghini has an SUV.
Oh, yes. Really?
Yes.
Oh, so I wonder how many of those were sold. Oh, the 2025 Lamborghini Urus.
Mm-hmm.
Urus.
That one.
Let's see how many of those were sold. Lamborghini Urus sales numbers. It says it. The first thing is
sold out until 2026.
Well, that's sweet. In 2023, they sold 5,900 Uruses.
Again, worldwide, most likely.
Yes.
I'm totally random. Saw one at the parking lot at Target over in Brookwood, like a month ago. Just walking by, Lamborghini SUV right there. I was
in
like,
Brookwood,
in like a normal Target parking spot, not even far away from the door. I was like, I might put that thing a little further away.
That person's bold.
I might take up 2 spots with that one.
Might have been. They sold in the United States 1,600 Uruses. So now we're down to 1,600.
Not a ton.
What color was it?
I want to say I've seen a photo of him with it, and it was black.
Dang it. I wish it was like yellow cream or like some obscure color, green. Like cobalt blue, neon green, something that's even a little louder.
The picture of him in the dealership he's receiving a black one.
Love that.
But I don't know if we've seen it in the wild.
So you're saying it's just for decoration?
Are we thinking that this dealership had a deal with him and it was for an extended period of time, and when he transfers, they can't get out of it? And you think that guy's like, oh man, he's still got the car.
I don't know if they give him the car or if they let them lease the car for free, and when you leave, you give it back.
That's what I would imagine.
I would think to lease the car for free.
He's got it from Atlanta Autos, a 2024 Lamborghini Urus Performante, starts at $270,000.
There you go.
Do you think he has a different trim level that bumped the price up from $270,000?
You think he has,
I'll take the automatic windows.
Cloth interior, or do you think he has?
I think it's
cruise control,
lane assist.
Fine, I'll take Apple CarPlay.
Yes, definitely Apple CarPlay. Think he tinted the windows? Think he has yellow brake calipers?
They're red. I can see them.
Ooh, good look. Yeah, I don't know.
Does it come with Bluetooth?
Doubt it.
Power windows?
Does he have a legal spoiler, unlike the NASCAR guy?
Would that be embarrassing if you had that Lambo, but you still had the old school hand crank window?
God, that'd be amazing. I wish so bad they were like, we're going to do a retro series. Here, you have to do manual windows and not automatic door lock and manual seats.
Separate key for ignition and the trunk.
Yeah, exactly. That would be amazing.
Is the trunk still in the front of the Lamborghini SUV? Like it is in the car?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just not enough of a car guy to appreciate this. Maybe he's just a big car guy.
That's probably it.
Or maybe,
it's in the back.
You know.
The motor's in the back or the trunk is?
Trunk's in the back.
Yeah.
Maybe too wild, I guess.
Yeah. Can't get too crazy. This thing's sweet, but I don't really get it. It looks kind of small. Is it small?
It feels like it is.
Is it what you would call a crossover?
It does look like a crossover, yes.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and call it the Lamborghini sedan. No, you know what? We'll call it a station wagon.
Didn't Ford do this with a Mustang too? Like
they did.
Basically making it look like a
Mustang SUV.
Yeah,
I know somebody that has one of those.
Wasn't it like the Mustang?
Let's just call it the Lambo CRV.
Love that.
What's the company that makes all the good crossovers? Is it Hyundai? And that's like all they make. Subaru. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Is that the Outback?
All right. So who's the Lambo Urus competing with? Subaru Outback for sure. We know that.
The Mazda CX-30.
Yes. Good one.
Yeah, it's the Ford Mustang Mach-E.
Yeah. Also known as the Mustang SUV.
Because when you can't go Mach 1, you go Mach letters.
Well, it's electric vehicle. Because when I think Ford power.
Mustang, that's it.
I want to get a
Great American power. Yep. Muscle, yeah.
Great American battery.
I'm sure there's an Audi crossover that's probably competing
Q8,
with.
honestly,
definitely.
According to the internet, they share the same design as the Euros.
As a what?
The whatever the hell the Lamborghini's called.
Ah.
The one that got stolen.
Yeah.
Urus.
And you had to have had those things shipped down there. How much does it cost to get your car shipped?
Not much. That's doable.
Well, doable, but
$500, $600.
That's it?
Yeah, not
from
bad.
Athens to Coral Gables?
Piece of cake. Well, for a Lambo, it's probably a little more.
Oh, yeah, the upcharge.
You're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, we're going to put a Lambo on the back
the connection
here.
fee.
We can't just put that on
fee,
yeah.
The driving fee. Riding the highway fee.
I'm looking at this. Fuel consumption.
Oh, that's where you want
power
to go.
Consumption. CO2 emissions. I mean, I love how I'm on the main website and there's like a standard scroll at the bottom where it's telling me all the fuel consumption with discharged battery, CO2 efficiency. Let me just go ahead and tell you right now. If you ever catch me in a Urus or any type of Lambo for that matter, let me tell you what I'm not worried about. My carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Not happening. Not worried about it.
In an interview with 247 Sports back during the season, said that he grew up a car guy. Quote, "I've always been a car guy since I was a kid. I grew up always loving cars. My dream car when I was super, super young was a Mustang. Never had a Mustang.
Mustang Mach-E?
Kind of grew out of it when I was 14 or 15. Always been a huge car guy. Growing into that, being able to associate myself with that brand, it's a large brand name. Being able to get that car, obviously a blessing."
Wait, hang on a second. So Lambo is associating with Carson Beck?
No, Atlanta Autos is.
Gotcha.
I think. Not sure if they are anymore.
Interesting. Okay. All right. We're good.
So there you go. Some problems down in Coral Gables. More
Hate
college.
that. Hope they find it.
I'm going to say no.
You don't think they'll find it?
Nah.
What's
being chopped up as we speak?
You chop up a Lambo?
You've got to get the serial number off of it, don't you?
Yeah, you can do that with a nail file.
Rewire it. Get a new computer in it so you can't track it. Like you said, how do you not
How do you not go to your
Lambo app and say, here's where it is? That just feels easy.
It feels a little too easy.
Yep.
I'd probably, if I were to steal a car, not taking a Lambo. Not happening.
Well, wasn't Honda Accord the most stolen car in America for like a decade?
Heck yeah. Let's ride.
Who wants that? All right, we'll be back to talk some more college football next. I'll spend a little bit of time on the SEC and Big Ten potentially pulling further away, trying to reshape the college football playoff, how that looks, how one would qualify for it. Before we do that, Greg, tell our listeners about Polar Bear Services.
Well, I've had great experience with Polar Bear Services for a long time. I've really appreciated Weston's professionalism and the type of company that they've created. It's been awesome because I know when I call them, the job's going to get done right. And there's a bunch of different ways they can help me around the house. It's cold as can be today here in Birmingham. So be mindful of your pipes. I mean, you might have some burst pipes. That could be a problem for you. Make sure you're aware and know that Polar Bear Services, they are available for you to not just help with your heat and air and your electrical. They've been doing that a while. but plumbing is something they've recently added to ways that they can help you as well. And if you have problems with your pipes because of this cold weather, make sure you remember to call the Bear. If you have a problem with your electrical, plumbing, heat, or air, pick up the phone and call the Bear. It's 205-497-BEAR. That's 497-BEAR.
Ryan Karchi reporting USC will not host a spring game in 2025. He says a source from the LA Times telling him this decision not to have a traditional game with fans in attendance. Another change brought upon the evolving college football landscape. So add them to the list of teams that will not be having a spring football game. And the most interesting part about this, Greg, to me is just going to be how this goes with networks moving forward. I think it's something that they have sort of relied upon, something that they want, something that's valuable. And now all of a sudden, are the coaches just going to be able to say no and take that away?
Well, I'm just telling you, this is going to happen more and more places. And the networks are not thrilled about it. Everyone's kind of frustrated by it, to be honest with you, because if you look at mid to high tier basketball, not elite level, not 1 versus 2 on E1, mid to high level basketball that we have here in the regular season for college hoop, these spring games rate higher. So it's a big deal, and they're recyclable. So they'll roll them over and over and over again. They'll
all summer.
They'll get 30 hours worth of content out of it. So having those unavailable to you is a problem. So the networks are not happy. I think there's some type of conversation that's probably going on behind the scenes. But at the same time, who can really blame the coaches?
No, it's
you
understandable.
just can't.
It really
I totally get it.
Speaking of ratings, 2.8 million viewers for Alabama-Auburn last weekend, peaked at 3.5. Most watched game of the season on ESPN platforms. Second most watched game across all networks. Most watched SEC-controlled regular season men's college basketball game since the 18-19 season. So pretty impressive showing last week. Kentucky, Texas came in at 1.5 million viewers also for college basketball. But as Greg stated, you go down just a couple of notches, and spring games are legitimately outrating those games. And that's why they are important to the networks and to the leagues. And that's going to be the back and forth that I'm interested to see, is how that's going to go. Is the Big Ten just going to be okay with USC saying, nope, we're not doing that this year? And how does that work moving ahead? Are there advantages for teams who do? Some coach is going to come out and say, we're not going to hold you back. We'll give you the chance to showcase all your skills all the time. Come go for it.
Yeah.
And it'll work for some guys.
Maybe.
Don't know how it's going to be long term. We will talk about, though, the SEC and the Big Ten, their plans moving forward when we come back next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 9:48, Thursday, February 20th, Jocks 94.5. If you missed Dave Pash, Wimp, Sanderson, you can go grab them at the podcast. JocksFM.com, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get yours. Watch live on YouTube every morning. Search Jocks 945. More coming out from Ross Dellinger and others, Greg, where the SEC and Big Ten plan to introduce change to the seating and the format for the 2025 playoff next week, eliminating automatic buys for conference champions, a move that will require some uniform agreement moving forward. I don't know if that will be easy to get from the Big 12 and the ACC. Based on where you see this going, do you think it happens? Is it easy for the SEC and the Big Ten to make this take place, or will it be a little bit more difficult?
I don't think it's going to be that difficult. I don't know what your sources are hearing or what everyone's saying, but I have not heard a whole lot that stands in the way of the SEC and the Big Ten getting what they want.
When you look at some of the ways that this could change things, conference championship games are another area that people look at and discuss, and you begin to realize that this is going to be very different. Per The Athletic, the SEC considering play-in games on conference championship weekend.
Love that.
One idea, 1 versus 8, 4 versus 5, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6 for a college football playoff automatic bid. The only way that I would think that this would make, this is just me, the only way I think this makes sense is if you take the 2 first teams that would be out of your automatic qualifier status, or the 2 teams that maybe were on the fence to be able to get in, let them play, and then that other win you should probably propel them in to be in the playoff, correct?
I think that makes sense, but I also think the only way I'm okay with the 4 conference qualifiers for the Big Ten and for the SEC is if they have a wing where that 8-team wing basically turns into one spot. Like I just am not, I don't think people are going to be super excited about the semifinals if it's 4 SEC teams that have played against each other already. You know what I mean? So sure. I think we need to be thoughtful about, okay, so here's the SEC teams 1 through 8. That's one of the brackets. So just think about the Sweet 16. Let's just imagine that one of the brackets, let's just say the Atlanta bracket, right? Where you're playing for a spot in the Final Four. Perfect. That's the SEC. They're in that wing. And then you take the Big Ten, they're in another wing. Put them at the top of the bracket, put the SEC at the bottom, vice versa, doesn't matter. If their teams continue to win, that'll be Big Ten SEC for the championship. Fine with that, but keep them in their own bracket. Then you take 2 of the at-large teams, play them against the 2 teams from the Big 12 or from the ACC. Then you take vice versa. So then you could potentially run to a scenario where it's SEC versus SEC in the semifinal. That could happen, but it's because an at-large team beat an ACC champion or an what have you, and you're cooking with gas. That's the only thing I think makes sense to do it. But I like that they're being thoughtful and not trying to dig in on the conference championship format that we've had now for 30 years because it's dead. It really is. With the expanded playoff, it's dead.
I wonder when you begin to look at all the different options, what's the most valuable way to manage it? And I guess there's different ways to even look at value. What's most valuable to the league as far as being able to generate revenue on that day, in that game, or in those games? What's most valuable to the league from getting teams in that perspective? Because I as much as I would like to say, okay, take 5 and 6, let them play, that should get you an at-large. When you're talking about getting out of the 4 automatic qualifiers, if that's the direction it goes, it kind of feels like it's heading that direction. Wouldn't that make the most sense at that point in time? Now you're probably eliminating one of your teams also, where there might be a year that, depending on how things were structured moving forward, both of those could get in. We don't know exactly how it's going to look just yet.
No. But you know what's troubling here? Like if you look at right now, if you look at the top 8 teams in the SEC last year, do you realize that it would be all the way down to Ole Miss? And you know who would have missed it by a half game? A 7-5 Florida team. But if they would have somehow won, then they're 8-4, right? If they win one of those games, they're 8-4. And now we're talking about a team that was awful at one point earlier in the year with a chance to win it. And tell me, I mean, if Florida, the way they were playing in the final month of the season, them getting to the playoff is a real possibility.
Yeah.
So a possible 7-5 team, maybe an 8-4 team, being a team that's in the playoffs, man.
It just seems crazy.
Well, you're just talking about a team that botched a third of their season, and yet they still have a chance to get in. It just doesn't feel right to me. Like, we are putting too much of a premium on the playoff. You know what we're becoming? Like, I don't want to become this, but we're close. We're getting to the point where we start to become like college basketball,
right?
Where the regular season doesn't matter. You play for seeding, but ultimately, like, nobody cares until you get to the postseason. That's when you have universal appeal. Well, in college football, you have universal appeal in the regular season.
I think that there have been times that people have had real fear of the regular season taking a big hit with what was coming next, be it the BCS, be it the 14 playoff, and then 12-team playoff. This is the first time that I have, if we were to go to, some of these scenarios that seem like they're very feasible, very possible right now, that I have an inherent fear that the regular season could take a pretty big hit. And that large portions of the regular season would lose value and maybe lose some interest.
Yeah.
But it also depends on which direction we go here. We don't know exactly where that's going to be or where that's going to go. Because I have thought, no, BCS, I could see where that was going to, 14, I could see where that was going to help regular season. 12-team, I didn't have that real concern. I'm starting to have some of those concerns now of what exactly is the regular season going to look like, what it's going to be. And then, too, when you add on to that, if some of the things you just said are the direction that it goes with multiple Big Ten, SEC non-conference games in the beginning of the season, does that dwindle things down, dwindle some of the interest down even more?
Yeah.
We don't know, but I do think it's a viable concern now, maybe more so than ever.
I think we're getting to the point where we've got to start thinking about shrinking the regular season.
That's got to be next. It has to be.
It's just, I think we're starting to really play with fire here. I'm genuinely concerned. I really am. And I think we need to be real thoughtful about any moves we make.
And Greg Sankey was thoughtful yesterday when asked about the rest of college football. And he said, if I was only worried about the SEC, we would have stayed at 4 teams, which was very beneficial for his league for a long time. All right. Appreciate Dave Pash, Wimp, Sanderson joining the show. You can catch those podcasts or the replay on YouTube. Search Jocks945. Go to jocksfm.com. You can always listen back to the show there. Tomorrow, we'll talk more about this new direction that college football seems to be headed. 3-man front coming at you next.